licensed contractor, and then he could get an encroachment permit from the city and then fix the problem that
All right, I call this meeting to order. I am on a continued roll of being on time, so let's not break it. Let's see. First, I just want to mention there are no Assembly Bill 2449 teleconference requests. And if we'll all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Are there any changes to the order of the agenda?
No changes from staff this evening, Mr. Mayor.
All right. Mr. Mayor, I would like to request that we move the public comment to the next item in front of presentations, as we have some speakers that have some time issues.
Okay. Are there any, everyone okay with that? Okay, let's move on to public comment then for items not on the agenda. Persons wishing to address the City Council on matters not on the posted agenda may do so. Each speaker is limited to 2 minutes. If there are more than 5 individuals wishing to speak during public comment, the mayor may choose to allow the first 5 speakers to speak during this time, and the balance of the public comment speakers will be called upon at the end of the meeting. Crystal, do you have any?
Yes, we have 3 speakers in person. First up is Gary C. Waldeck.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Well, hello, folks. Thank you for making this possible for me. I'm Gary Waldeck. I want you to know that I've sat in your seats. I was a counselor or a city councilman and a mayor for Los Altos Hills for a total of 8 years. I understand the situations you sometimes get into. But the question is, why am I here? And the short answer to that is, and the other half of that is, why have I assembled a report that I've given to you? I've been in discussion with a number of San Carlos residents, recent, and this goes back for about 2 years. And I found that there's something just very odd going on in the city's management system. I don't know what it is, but I have some information for you in that document I've given you. Having been giving 2 minutes to make you aware of an interesting anomaly, I want to focus on the public works area. In particular, a program that failed, I have to read this because I can't remember it, I'm too old, failed to conclude contractual objectives and very questionable payments to the contractors. Now, I've been in your seat, and I was curious regarding some of these comments, and subsequently, I sought to look into it myself. This is all verbal in the top, but at the bottom, I picked a single report, and guess what I found? The report you've just been handed outlines several questionable elements that have been identified and raised questions that should and need to be addressed by you. The document I've given you is just one example, but there are others. And from the information I've seen, I'm confident to assure you that there is much more surprising and adverse information that you may well uncover. I'm here tonight to make each of you aware of a potentially huge problem that may well come back and haunt you. It's not a nice thing to say, and I don't like making this presentation. So last, I encourage each of you to operate as a team to review and further examine your management system, to review at least the previous 2 years of construction, and
I need you to wrap up, sir, because 2 minutes is up.
I got 3 seconds here. Appropriate action starting with the data I've given you tonight. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you very much for your time and your appreciation.
Thank you.
Okay, next up is Gina Gilty with the Industrial Arts Business Associates.
Good evening. I would like to take this opportunity. My name is Gino Guidi, and I'm on the board with the Industrial Arts Business Association. Just wanted to come by tonight. I'm new to the board. I want to thank the mayor and the council for all the support they've given our neighborhood in the past and the great collaboration you've done with our group to foster development there in artisan crafts and trades and promote the service industry. Just want to thank you guys for being a partner. We have a lot of steam happening this year. We have the car show coming up, and thanks again for your support with that. We look to grow the district and the interest and bring more people there and keep it a fun area and keep it what it was. I just want to say thanks to the mayor and council members for their partnership and our efforts. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, and next up is John Lilligren.
Thank you, Mayor Rack and council members. I'm John Lilligren. I live in San Carlos. Just have a brief comment about North Crestview Park. As I told you last week in the meeting, someone had driven a truck into North Crestview Park and through a fence that goes into the watershed. I did report that to the SFPUC, and I also notified San Carlos through the Inform San Carlos app. The San Carlos person just said, that's not our responsibility. And as the PUC hadn't gotten to it, so I ended up repairing it myself. It just took about 3 or 4 zip ties to replace what was there. My concern is that if the fence is breached, we have people trespassing, which is not a big deal, but it's also opening up for other mischief, which isn't good, and probably would not have goodwill if you want to have further cooperation from the PUC for connecting with trails and tracks. So I would just suggest, I don't know how often the park is inspected, but if somebody is up there and they see that, in this case, it was one of those orange snow fences that was just pulled down, as I said, about 3 or 4 zip ties was all I needed to do to put it back in place. And I haven't been back there since, so I don't know if it's breached again. But, we want to be good neighbors with the PUC, and we should respect that that's a non-trespassing area. Thank you.
Thank you. Jeff, is that something we can look into about?
I'll follow up again with Public Works.
Thank you. Crystal, are there any more public comment?
There are no more slips in person, and I don't see any hands on Zoom. Thank you.
Okay. If it's for items not on the agenda, you're welcome to come up and fill out a form after.
Hello, I'm John Aiken. I live in San Carlos, and I just, there's a couple emails going back and forth with the planning department, and we just would like to have some questions answered, and we're not really sure why they are. There's a 4,200 square foot house with an ADU going in on Howard Avenue, and we really want to know what's going on. Well, last year, you could only put a 3,200 square foot home on there. Now it's 1,000 feet bigger, it's 3 stories, and there's a 1-car garage. It just seems wrong, but we'd love to have our questions answered. Answer the emails.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Aiken. Jeff, can you follow up with Mr. Aiken as well?
Yep.
Thank you.
Half of Howard Avenue, the house that's being built to us, 2540 next door to us. We have 1,000 square foot on one side, 4,200 is going to be built next to us, and there's another 1,000 square foot on the other side. So I guess the question remains the same too, is that they're allowed 4,200 square feet because 842 is going to be exempted as an ADU, and that's 3 stories, like John said, and it's going to block our sunlight, and I can't get solar because 2 solar contractors came over and said, you can't get solar because the southwest corner is now going to be blocked from sunlight. And I know San Carlos says, we don't care about your sunlight, we don't care about your privacy, we don't care, but I think you should care, because what happened in Redwood City in 2019, they changed the zoning laws because people were building monstrosity houses. And I don't want that to happen to me, like they build a monstrosity house and then I can't sell mine to someone who can also build a monstrosity house with ADUs. And as I go through the neighborhood, there's lots of ADU problems. They're renting them out as Airbnbs. And I don't know if the city knows that's going on or if that's allowed or not, but I think we have a real ADU problem in San Carlos.
Thank you.
Are there any comments from the public? Okay, I think we might be okay. Thank you.
All right. Thanks to everyone who spoke. We're now going to move on to presentations. And the first one is to present a city coin to community volunteer Phil Abrams. All right, come on up, Phil. I had to bring a cheat sheet because you have so many volunteer opportunities, I can't keep them straight. So come on over here, we'll present this first. And I love doing these because we actually get people to come into the room. So we might have to do these randomly throughout the meeting so people can't leave. But so I started this year as mayor, and we've had a couple. We have one of our already former coin winners here today, so that's a good sign. People come back after they get the coin. But I just want to. I love San Carlos, and one of the great things about San Carlos is our volunteers and what they contribute to the community. It really helps to make us the city of good living and who we are. So I'm honored to give this to Phil. I'm going to give you a quick little recap so everyone knows of all Phil's wonderful volunteer opportunities. So Phil is the current president of the San Carlos Kiwanis Club, and as he puts it, it's his third time, and he's trying to get it right this time. He's the past president of the Friends of the San Carlos Adult Community Center, and is a current board member. He is the past president of the Peninsula Temple Bethel Men's Club and Brotherhood, and he is a Peninsula Temple Bethel governing board member 4 times during 4 decades. I think Phil has a hard time saying no to things. Board member of the National Football Foundation and College Hall of Fame, which awards scholarships to scholar athletes and facilitates medical testing in our 12 Northern California counties. He is a volunteer for Healthy Cities and currently with White Oaks, a student at White Oaks. He helps with the volunteer caring cupboard, and he is a volunteer and advisory board member of the Rape Trauma Services of San Mateo County. So, Phil, I'm honored and pleased to give you this city coin to thank you for all your dedication to the community.
Lovely. Thank you.
Phil, say a few words. I've been warned, though, I might have to give you the hook from your wife.
My daughter said this looked long. I don't know. But anyway, just to thank you, Adam, and all our wonderful city council members, how lucky we are in this city to have you, and could not be a more wonderful group. To our city manager, our city attorney, and to all the people that make it happen. Really, that's very much part of what we have in this city. I grew up in San Mateo in the Baywood area, and all I really knew about San Carlos was that my uncle Leonard Cohen and my uncle's brother Sid Levin owned the San Carlos Auto Wrecker. So in high school we would drive and look at old cars and see their business. Eventually they sold acres to our city, I think it was a city, for the airport and that area, so they were my successful relatives. We were lucky enough to buy our first house in San Carlos on Belmont Avenue when we were 23, and the house we're in now when we were 29, and how smart we were, right? And we had our 2 children, Emily and Jason, went to Sequoia. Jason's boys went to Hillsdale, and Eden, our granddaughter, is at Carlmont graduating, and Jude at Terra Linda. So we are so lucky, and my friends tell me how how great it is that our kids are close. Joan's father was an All-American football player at Stanford and the first football coach at Carmont when it was built. And then eventually vice principal at Menlo Atherton and vice principal at San Carlos High School when we had our own high school, which we sadly don't anymore. When I sold our former work corporation, I got to have time to get involved in our community and Kiwanis and the SCACC and other organizations. And what we really learn is not only doing good things, but also the friends that you make when you get involved. And so it's a combination of a lovely thing to do to support your community and also to just have new groups of friends. And so that's just an extra byproduct of what we do when we volunteer. Finally, I often say, and people say they've heard it before, but that a community is judged on how well we care about our seniors and our youth. And I think our community of San Carlos has done an amazing job with that and with taking care of all of our citizens. So I thank you all for this. It's lovely and appreciate it. And thanks for all you guys do to make this such a wonderful place to live. So.
Thank you, and congratulations again, Phil. I love also all the speeches we've heard from people because it's really fascinating to hear everyone's experiences in this community. So thank you. All right, now we're going to move on. I got a few more presentations today. Let me see here. The next one, got lots to do. My goodness. We moved out of order, so now I have to find them all. Okay. The next one is to present a proclamation recognizing April 2023 as Parkinson's Awareness Month, and we will have Vikas Chinnan from the Parkinson Foundation California Chapter Advisory Board member, and Dr. Salima Brillman, founder of the Parkinson's Disease and Movement Disorder Center of Silicon Valley. So I'll do that. All right, and I will say, Vic, it's good to see you again. Good to see you again. We ran into each other at the recycling center, right. And he reminded me that I hadn't responded to his email about this, so it was, it was good. He said, wait, but you're Adam Rack, aren't you? And I said, yes. So, all right. All right, so whereas Parkinson's disease is a chronic progressive neurological disease and is the second most common neurodegenerative disease in the United States, and whereas Parkinson's disease is the 14th leading cause of death in the United States and estimated to affect approximately 1 million people in the United States, and the prevalence is expected to rise to 1.2 million by 2030, and whereas it is estimated that the economic burden of Parkinson's disease is at least $52 billion annually, including direct and indirect costs, including treatment, Social Security, payments, and lost income to patients and family members. And whereas research suggests the cause of Parkinson's disease is a combination of genetic and environmental factors, but the exact cause and progression of the disease is still unknown. And whereas there is no objective test or biomarker for Parkinson's disease, and there is no cure or drug to slow or halt the progression of the disease. And whereas the symptoms of Parkinson's disease vary from person to person and can include tremors, slowness of movement and rigidity, difficulty with balance, swallowing, chewing and speaking, cognitive impairment and dementia, mood disorders, and a variety of other non-motor symptoms. And whereas increased research, education, and community support services, such as those provided by the Parkinson's Foundation and other organizations, are needed to find more effective treatments, and to provide access to the quality care of those living with this disease today. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that I, Adam Rack, Mayor of the City of San Carlos, on behalf of the entire City Council, in recognition of the importance of the ongoing fight against Parkinson's disease, do hereby proclaim April 2023 as Parkinson's Awareness Month in the City of San Carlos, presented this 24th day of April 2023.
Absolutely. Great. I would just like to thank Mayor Rack and the City Council for this proclamation. With me here today, as you know, is Dr. Salima Brillman. She's a San Carlos resident since 2015 with her husband Michael and her son Liam, who attends the San Carlos Charter Learning Center. She's a movement disorder specialist and a respected member of the San Carlos community. Also with me via Zoom is Rachel Hausman, Development Director for Northern California at the Parkinson's Foundation. My name is Vikas Chinnan. In February 2022, I was diagnosed with young onset Parkinson's disease at the age of 45. Of the 1 million Americans living with Parkinson's disease, only 4% are below the age of 50. I have lived in San Carlos since 2012, and with me here in the room today are my wife, Supreet Chinnan, and my older son, Bailey, who's a freshman at Carlmont High School. My younger son is a rising 7th grader at Tierra Linda Middle School. He's a little under the weather tonight, so he couldn't be here. We've always been proud to be a part of this community, but today we are even more proud. If you can use the word lucky to be diagnosed with a progressive neurological disease, I consider myself one of the lucky ones. I'm supported on this journey by a great medical team, including Dr. Brillman, a great family, and a strong Parkinson's community. Since being diagnosed in 2022, I gave up my career at a technology startup and shifted my focus to Parkinson's advocacy and outreach. As we've seen, April is Parkinson's Awareness Month, and this year, the Parkinson's Foundation is highlighting a recent study suggesting that 90,000 Americans will be diagnosed with Parkinson's disease each year. That's a 50% increase over previously released estimates. It also translates to 1 new diagnosis every 6 minutes. For that year, this reason's theme for Parkinson's Awareness Month is Take 6 for PD. In other words, we are asking folks to take 6 minutes of your month to help raise awareness about Parkinson's disease and its impact. I assure you that this proclamation is more than symbolic. It's personal to me and meaningful to me, a proud resident of San Carlos, that my city would take a few minutes to bring awareness to the condition I live with every day. It means a lot to the 2,000 people in San Mateo County and the 1 million people in the United States living with Parkinson's disease. It means a lot to those who are suffering, feeling isolated, and unable to access resources to live well with Parkinson's disease. It means a lot to the friends, families, and care partners affected by the disease. And finally, it means a lot to the medical professionals who've made a career out of caring for people who live with Parkinson's disease. Again, I want to thank the City Council for making this proclamation, and thank you for allowing me a few minutes to share my story and express my gratitude. Thank you.
Thank you, Vikas. And Dr. Brillman, thank you. Do any of my colleagues have any comments to make? Okay. And is there any public comment? Okay.
Yes,
Go ahead,
there
Crystal.
is a public comment. Okay, first up is Parkinson's Foundation West Coast. You should be able to unmute. There you go.
Hi, everyone. My name is Rachel Hausman. Thank you so much for proclaiming this as Parkinson's Awareness Month. I work at the Parkinson's Foundation, as Vikas mentioned. I just wanted to take one quick moment to make you all aware of an event coming up in less than 2 weeks in person. The Parkinson's Foundation does Moving Day walks all over the country on different dates. And the Moving Day San Francisco walk is coming up on May 6th at Crissy Field. It is open to the public, and all are welcome to come, especially if you'd like to learn more about Parkinson's or learn more about how you can get involved. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rachel. And there are no further hands.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to come back down. We have some more presentations, and I forgot to ask if anyone had any comments on the city coin. I don't want to make sure I didn't miss anything on that.
I'm not seeing any hands.
Okay. All right, thank you. Stop for 1 second. I forgot to pause to do a picture. So.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Okay. Now, while I have a giant stack here, I'm only going to read one of these. I promise not to keep you here for that long. So we have, I'm honored to recognize we have, I think it's 7 of our San Carlos elementary schools that were received a Distinguished School Award for State of California. So we're going to present that proclamation, that sort of award to all of them. I'll just read one, and then we'll have everyone come up. So I'm going to be, I'll go alphabetical, and I think Arroyo's first, so they get to be read. So, all right. So this one is for the Arroyo Upper Elementary School, but again, it's for all the schools, and I'll read them all off afterwards. Whereas the California Distinguished School Program was established by the California Department of Education to recognize schools that demonstrate exemplary achievements in one of 2 categories, closing the achievement gap and achieving exceptional student performance. And whereas since its inception in 1985, the California Distinguished Schools Award remains an important way to celebrate exceptional schools for providing outstanding public education and opportunities to students. And whereas the California Department of Education uses a multiple measures accountability system to identify eligible schools based on their performance and progress on state indicators, including assessment results, rates of chronic absenteeism, suspension rates, and socioeconomic data. And whereas only 6% of the 5,872 elementary schools in California earned the designation of being a 2023 California Distinguished School, and whereas the elementary schools recognized this year are illustrative of the hard work, dedication, and resilience shown by educators and schools across the state after communities struggled for multiple years with urgent effects to physical and mental health and unprecedented challenges to delivering education. And whereas Arroyo Upper Elementary School is one of the 7 elementary schools in the city of San Carlos selected for this prestigious award. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that I, Adam Rack, Mayor on behalf of the City Council and community, do hereby congratulate Arroyo Upper Elementary School upon receiving the 2023 California Distinguished School Award, and commend its teachers, school administrators, and staff for their innovation, talent, and success in supporting the development of the whole child. So I'm going to have... We have a whole group. Hans Barber, the assistant superintendent for the district, come up. And hopefully everyone's here. Neil, you can come up too. Neil Layton, school board. What is school board secretary? Is that your title now? Clerk, excuse me. We have Jennifer Gabbery from Arundel, the Arundel principal. Suzanne Fast, the Britton Acres principal. Diederik Bonemeyer from Heather, and Francis Dickinson who's the executive director for Charter Learning Center. So, and I think Hans is going to accept for the ones that aren't here, which is, let's see, I've got to remember who I have here. They made this hard on me to do this. All right, Arundel is here, okay. Thank you. And Britton Acres is here. Thank you. Who else is? Heather is here. All right. Thank you. And Charter is here. Okay. Thank you. And I have Mariposa and White Oaks and Arroyo for Hans to share. Do that. So.
as they used to say when I was principal, don't hand him a microphone, because you never know. First of all, thank you, Mayor Rack and council members, much appreciated. To receive this honor tonight, we had the pleasure of, Neil and I, with a group of folks from each school, I had the pleasure of attending the Distinguished School Service in Southern California back in February. So this is just, we're kind of stretching this out. It's really fun to be honored. And it's wonderful. And I'm also really thankful that three of our principals could join us tonight. And obviously, Trustee Layton too. Thank you. We're really appreciative of our partnership with the city. Amongst other things, the 2+2 committee is where we have a chance to discuss pieces that affect both the city and the school district. In fact, we had a meeting just earlier this week where we discussed some important items. So we want to thank you for that. Above all, Dr. Frentress and I, Dr. Frentress is our superintendent. We often say we can't do the work. Our job is sort of to set conditions so that the work can be done at school sites. It is our teachers, our staff, and our principals that really do the work that makes the difference for the students, the kids of San Carlos. And that makes the schools a gem of the community. And, to honor it publicly really means a lot to us, first of all, and second of all, to all of the staff and teachers and our principals for this to be happening tonight. We are very, very appreciative of that. Most of all, we have a great community here. And I think the schools are part of that community. In fact, I kind of look at it as the cornerstone of the community, and it's why people come here and it's why people stay here. Wonderful to hear you speak tonight about how, you came to San Carlos, you were fortunate, your children went through the San Carlos schools, and, that's an all too common story in our city. So it's my pleasure to serve the school district and the city, and again, we thank you so much for honoring us publicly tonight.
Let's see, we've got Councilmember Collins.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I want to thank everyone from the San Carlos schools that are here tonight. As a product of the San Carlos school system, I was the beneficiary of a great education, and you can tell your students that maybe someday they too can grow up and be on the city council. So anyway, congratulations again.
Okay, and I just wanted to make just a quick separate comment as a former school board member in San Carlos. It's really exciting to see this and to see have these awards be presented and earned, and I congratulate you on that. I will say that it is particularly exciting for me to see. I'm going to single out Arroyo and Mariposa in this case because when I was on the school board, we made the decision, which wasn't always super popular, but to create the 4-5 school system. And I remember my oldest daughter had made a comment to me that she struggled in middle school, but knowing that if the 4-5 had been there, she felt she might have had a better experience. So for you to come from, in a decade or less to get to that point is a great accomplishment. So congratulations to everyone. Is there any public comment?
There are no hands from Zoom, and I don't have any speaker slips for in person.
All right. Well, congratulations again, and thanks, everyone. Give people a second to clear out if they want, and then we will, I think we're going to spread these presentations throughout the entire meeting next time. So we will move on to item 6, jumping out of order, which is the council communications and announcements. Does anyone have a communications or anything from my colleagues? Nope. Councilmember McDowell.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you for those lovely proclamations. That was really special to hear everybody, so thank you for doing that. I have 3 announcements that I will be very brief about. I wanted to thank our staff for a super successful farmers market on Sunday. I went down there and it was just packed and everyone was so happy. And I think that partnering with Urban Village seemed to be going well. And I especially appreciate that now that we're working with Urban Village, we can join the state's CalFresh program, which gives our low-income community members access to fresh fruits and vegetables. So I'm looking forward to kind of spreading the word on that going forward too. Also wanted to thank staff, especially Lou, for the new planters downtown. I received a lot of positive feedback about that, and I think the community really loves the new look, so thanks for doing that. And then 2 other updates I wanted to just share with my colleagues that Councilmember Venkatesh and I worked with Andrea Martisich on our staff and Stephanie Rogers with we had a child care roundtable last Wednesday where we brought together several child care center owners, a family child care provider, our school district, as well as our county supervisor, Ray Mueller, staff from our state representative, state senator's office, Josh Becker, and staff from Assemblymember Diane Pappin's office. We had a really good, robust conversation about childcare in San Carlos, talked a lot about staffing and the transition to universal TK and how that impacts our childcare providers here in town. So just wanted to say thank you for everyone who attended and shared. And then I also wanted to share that last week I attended the ribbon cutting ceremony for the new San Mateo County Navigation Center, which is in Redwood City. It is the first multi-story prefabricated modular shelter project in the nation. It will include 240 temporary living units for adults experiencing homelessness. And what's really interesting about this project is couples are allowed to stay together and it is pet friendly. So that's different than some of the congregate shelters that we currently have in our county. It will also offer fully staffed medical and dental clinics, as well as mental health and substance abuse services. So residents will be moving in early May, and I think this is really an important step forward in addressing homelessness in our county. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember McDowell. I don't see any other hands. I just want to also just pass on my congratulations for the successful launch of the farmers market. I was down there yesterday. It was great. Had a fantastic day, and really it was good to have it back. And also, I just want to echo the Councilmember McDowell's comments on the water barriers and the updates from Public Works. I think it was really a great improvement. I've heard lots of positive comments about it. People are really happy with the change, and I saw the flowers are there now, so which is even better. And that's it. Pass that on. And all right. So now we did public comment. We're going to move on to item 8, which is the consent calendar. Does any of my colleagues want to pull anything from the consent calendar? Okay. Does anyone from the public want to pull anything from the consent calendar? Okay. Can I get a motion to approve the consent calendar?
I move to approve City Council consent calendar items A through F.
Second.
Okay. First and a second. Chris, there's any public comment on the consent calendar?
There are no hands.
Okay. Can you call the roll, please?
Okay, Councilmember Collins?
Yes.
Councilmember McDowell?
Yes.
Councilmember Venkatesh?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Dugan?
Yes.
And Mayor Rack?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to item 9, public hearing. This is consideration of adopting a resolution authorizing the adjustments to the cost of services schedule, user fees, park facility development, sewer capacity charge, and traffic impact fee for fiscal year 2023 to 2024, and adding a visa/police clearance request form and beekeeping fees to the master fee schedule. Rebecca.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Rebecca Mendenhall, Administrative Services Director. So as noted, for your consideration tonight is the annual update of our user fee and our development impact fee schedules. So if adopted, the fees would take effect July 1st, 2023, as there's a requirement for a 60-day noticing period for development fees. The total approximate revenue would be about approximately $861,000 across all city funds based on the activity levels that were used during the 2022 comprehensive study. Based on council direction last year, several of the planning and building fees related to smaller developments were phased in over 2 years, and in the second year, the fees have been set to 100% cost recovery. This included design review for single-family additions and permits for valuations less than $25,000. So the fees are reviewed annually, and last spring, the city underwent a comprehensive fee study with a third party to review and assess the costs of doing these activities. A comprehensive study is typically done every 3 to 5 years, as it takes about 6 months to complete. As indicated in Resolution 2022-79, approved in June of last year, the City Council chose to use the San Francisco, Oakland, San Jose, or the Bay Area Urban Wage Earners and Clerical Workers Consumer Price Index, otherwise known as CPIW, as a guideline for future annual increases. This year, that increase is 4.9%. In addition to the CPI increase, the annual review gives staff and the council an opportunity to review the fees again to see if there's any changes to be made. In addition to the user fees, there's an annual update to the development impact fees. These increases are set by the municipal code. The indexes used are the construction cost index, which is published by the Engineering New Record, which for this year is 1.56%. And the Construction Cost Index 20 City Average, which for this year is 4.9%. Since the child care development fees were just adopted by Council in August 2022, there are no changes at this time. Revenue is not projected until next fiscal year, and increases will occur annually thereafter in accordance with the Construction Cost Index. Fire prevention fees were separate from the fee study and the scope of review last year, since these services are contracted from the City of Redwood City. So as done in prior years, staff recommends adopting user fees based on the Redwood City user fee schedule upon its effective date as applicable. Parks and Recreation has a few updates. The security guard fee, staff recommends that this pass-through fee of $220 per hour to schedule security guards for private rentals serving alcohol. This fee is similar to the janitorial service fee for private rentals and is consistent with best practices in neighboring cities. Staff recommends to add a $25 fee to add the cornhole game area as reservable space tied to a Chestnut picnic site reservation. For the light use, staff is not recommending any changes to this fee. This fee was analyzed last year as part of the fee study and is a pass-through cost recovery for the service. The current and recommended fee is $32 per hour. The sports league field use fee was also studied last year, and the City Council opted to phase this increase over 2 years to land at a rate of $86 per player this year. The special event permit request fees are not recommended to be increased. This fee was also evaluated and increased over 40% last year. So staff is proposing to keep the fee the same so that it does not become cost prohibitive for community organizations to hold events. The current and recommended fee is $400 for a new event and $375 for a repeat event application. Similar to special events, staff is not recommending an increase to the sports tournament permit fees. Again, we're trying to keep the fee the same so that it does not become cost prohibitive. Staff is not recommending an increase to the Snack Shack fee. This is a new fee that was established last year, and we will continue to evaluate the staff time associated with this service. Staff is not recommending an increase to the facility rental application fee. This is a fee to ensure that any application submitted is genuine in their intent. The current and recommended fee is $25 per rental application. And the staff recommends updating the policy to waive the fee for up to 2 neighborhood block party permits per year, per neighborhood block. Community development has 2 changes. In last year's study, the council approved a $300 processing fee and a deposit of $500 to cover the actual cost of the arborists associated with protected trees. That process was cumbersome, so this year we're recommending to revise the section and move it to flat fees based on requested reason for removal. Depending on the complexity of the application, additional arborist fees may be applied at an hourly rate. The new fees by category represent 100% of the staff time to complete, and they're listed here for you. In addition to the change to the protected tree fees, there's a new beekeeping fee that's suggested, and this is to provide appropriate review and consideration of small-scale beekeeping and to ensure that beekeeping on certain size parcels in single-family residential zones will not be detrimental to the health, safety, and welfare of persons residing or working in that neighborhood. The proposed fee is based on staff time and will cover 100% of the staff time to complete. And finally, there is a request to create a new Visa police clearance request fee. It's currently waived, but the San Mateo County Sheriff's Office plans to resume charging this fee July 1st, 2023. And since we outsource to the Sheriff's Office, it's recommended that we also begin charging this. So with that, that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions, and staff is also here to answer any specific questions related to their departments.
Great, thank you, Rebecca. Do any of my colleagues have any questions? Vice Mayor Dugan.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess I've got a couple areas of question, but I'll just start with the security guard fee. First, the staff report said $220 per hour, and then I see that it's per event in what you presented tonight. Are we sure which one it is?
Per event.
It is per event. Okay. And yeah, Amy, I probably do have questions for you on this. Are we solving a problem with this? Has this been something that's come up as an issue, or?
Sure. Good evening, Amy Newby, Parks and Recreation Director. This conversation has been discussed with Parks and Recreation directors in the county for several years. Prior to COVID, it was a big topic of conversation. It's been an issue in a few communities in our county. And during COVID, we ceased private rentals at our community centers. And so now that we've resumed them, I'm presenting this more as a proactive fee so that we don't come across any issues. And to put a scenario in place so you understand, this is for rentals at the adult community center where we allow a private rental to bring in beer or wine, and it's during the weekend. So we'll have our part-time facility attendants working a private rental, and it's usually one person. And it could be an 18-year-old who's managing a party for 100 people, let's say. And so on a more proactive approach, this fee is being recommended. And it is consistent with a few other cities in the county.
Okay, so no particular issue, but being proactive. And then what do you get for the $220?
A private security guard to be at the facility during the event.
And we have that contract, we have that arranged, or?
We do. So we're in the process of signing a contract for security guard services for a few of our events, and then this is included as an additional item.
Okay, and it'll be like one security guard? Is that what it'll probably look like? Okay.
And again, as needed, not for every rental. It just is if you meet that criteria, and it's for the adult community center.
Got it. And I'm just curious, so does this open up any new liability for us as a city? Like, now we're sort of the organizer, or, somehow we're more involved in those alcohol sales if we're providing the security, right?
Well, I think it's part of the fee that the person using our facilities is going to pay. So it's a service that we're providing the security guard, but they're paying the fee. And I think it's actually, it might be argued to reduce our liability because we'll have a presence there to help manage an incident that could potentially happen involving in those particular events. So I think all in all, and I hear best practices from other communities for these types of events, it's probably a good idea to have that. And that would enable, typically, when there's a security guard, I think it enables quicker action if something were to happen, because that security guard would know exactly who to call and would act quickly, I would think, in a circumstance if something were to happen.
Yeah, no, I agree. It could certainly be a useful resource on site, but if something bad did happen, you know, a teenager gets drunk, drives away or something, I'm just curious if that does open up a new avenue for us.
Well, I think we do require insurance of people who rent from us, so our insurance is intended to deal with those types of situations. And, you know, there's strict rules about serving alcohol and to people and managing, making sure that people have the proper ID and the training involved in making sure that people who have had a little too much don't have any more. I mean, that's part of the liquor license.
Okay, great. And this is just for the ACC? It sounded like this was, I mean, do people ever serve alcohol at a party in Burden Park or something? Or?
We do permit alcohol at our picnic sites. They do have to purchase additional insurance. This fee is just being recommended for the Adult Community Center.
Okay, I didn't pick up on that. Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
Councilmember Collins.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Sorry, Amy, sorry, one follow-up question on that. I think Greg answered it, but I assume that the security guard is fully trained and they know, they're already briefed as to what to do if there's a problem.
Correct, and it's the company that we've used for the Art and Wine Fair for years, and we brought them back last year. And they also worked our family campout event. So we've had a good working experience with them in the last year, and we'll be moving forward with the contract with them moving forward.
Thank you. All right, next question, and only my second, only two, for Rebecca. On the tree issue, protected trees, where it says risk or health rating, do you mean like a damaged or diseased tree?
I'm going to let Andrea answer that.
You can. Does that apply to people whose trees are not doing well and they got to be taken out?
Correct. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Andrea Martisich, Assistant Community Development Director. That does encompass two separate reasons for removal, either a risk of falling and causing damage. The arborist will take into consideration where it could fall. Would it be a structure? Would it be in an open field? Things like that to determine the risk rating. And then, I'm sorry, what was the other one? The risk and the health.
Health of the tree.
Right. And so separate from the risk, the arborist will also look at the health based on principles within a certain book that he uses to determine whether the tree is healthy, whether it's structurally sound, whether it looks like it could be dying, could it come back in the future. So he will look at all those. There are two separate reasons for removal, but they're under one fee in the user fee study.
I'm glad it says per project, because I have a neighbor that had 3 birch trees and they were all diseased.
Right.
And they all had to come out. Although the $500 fee seems a little stiff. Is that in line with what other jurisdictions charge?
I would need to look at the other jurisdictions. It is what we found when we did the study last year, when we took in this deposit and proposed this $500 deposit. We're finding that for reasons of risk, health, utility, I believe those 3, and also development, at the very least, they're spending about 1.75 to 2.5 hours, which equals about $500, depending on whether it's a lower level arborist or supervising arborist. We've also found that in this last year, since council adopted the new ordinance, that for a lot of these types of permits, we've had time to onboard the arborist and really have them take over a lot of the processing. So we've removed the $300 staff fee that was charged in addition to that $500.
Okay,
Yeah.
so a bit of a break.
A bit of a break.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Councilmember Venkatesh.
Oops. Let's see if oh no. Who monitors the park and the alcohol use?
Who monitors the alcohol use in the building or in the
Park, I think she's saying.
In the park. It is self-monitoring. And if they're, in the public, if there's an issue, I would, yeah.
Did you have other questions? Okay. Councilmember McDowell.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll call up Andrea again. I have tree questions, just like Ron did, and I'll build on what Ron said. So during the recent storms, we heard a lot from residents who were concerned about their very large trees in their backyards. If they wanted to call out the arborist for a health or risk rating, can they do that, or do they have to have a probable cause that they're going to take the tree out?
So with the storms, we did engage our code enforcement department. So if we did get calls from people who were concerned about their trees falling, code enforcement would get involved if it was a neighbor's tree and not the person who's calling its tree, and try to make a determination. Most of the time, though, our arborists did need to go out because it wasn't something as obvious as a tree has already fallen or cracked in half. So in those cases, yes, the city arborist did go out. If he could make a finding as an emergency removal, then he would issue a permit for that, and those are at no charge to the applicants. If he found that the tree was not an emergency, but did meet one of the other criteria, he would direct the person to apply for the regular permit because it wouldn't meet the findings for that. But we did have that service. We had quite a few calls since the last, since July. We've had 33 emergency permits issued, and we usually have maybe 10 a year on a normal year. A lot were from the storms from New Year's Eve and on. And so we're still getting those, albeit not as frequently as we have the last few months.
Thank you. That's helpful. I agree with Ron. I think it's a little high because I think it's expensive to just hire the tree company to come out and remove the tree. And I also saw the dead tree is $250 per project. And I think, in my mind, I really want to incentivize our residents to remove the dead trees, knowing that it's such a liability and it's a, big safety issue to have dead trees falling. So I guess it's, is there any wiggle room to reduce this cost? And is that something that the council could potentially discuss tonight?
And I can speak to that a little bit in terms of process. If we have an applicant apply for a dead tree permit, we do take in the $250 as the fee. Not all the time, but frequently, the arborist will go out and determine that the tree actually is not dead, and will be coming back. Many times it is. And so the fee itself we did reduce because determining whether a tree is dead takes a lot less time than rating its health and doing all the tests for that. So that's why we did charge just proposing to charge the 1 hour of time. This proposal reflects full cost recovery. So if the council did want to lower that, it wouldn't be the full cost recovery, but that is what we had proposed.
Thank you. I guess I'll circle back in comments on fees.
You can do that. I had a couple, so I had other questions, but I guess since the tree issue came up, I guess I don't have questions, I have comments on it. But I guess the question is, Andrea, you did mention, so we did reduce the fee for the dead tree, right? Originally it was higher, and that was sort of one thing that we did come back with and reduce.
Correct.
Already.
So last year, we didn't change how we took in the fees. There's always been a deposit for arborist time plus a staff fee. And the idea was that dead trees would take less time to review, so that people would likely get a refund on their $500 deposit. However, a portion of that, I should say. However, they'd still be paying this non-refundable $300 deposit. So over the last few months, as we've been working with the arborist and really made it so that staff has become pretty hands-off with the dead tree permits, we feel like it's appropriate to remove the $300 fee and then just take in a straight fee of $250. So at the very least, it's been reduced by $300 and more likely by over $500. To get down to the 250. Yeah.
Thank you. And then just as a follow-up to that, it sounds like if the arborist goes out, determines that the tree is dead and it's an emergency, we'll just waive that fee. We'll refund them the difference. We'll refund them the $250.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, yeah. Perfect. My next question, I have one comment to Rebecca, which is, I just want to say, I'm glad that the fees are covering all our costs, because I know last year they weren't, and I wish they had, but I'm glad that they do now. Sorry, no question in there. I know it's Q&A, but I did have a question on the beekeeping. I don't know who has that one. Okay. So I saw the beekeeping fee. It was my understanding when we took this issue up, if I recall correctly, we never sort of came to an agreement, or we never sort of approved whether we would permit beekeeping in the city. This is sort of anticipation that this may come back since we're doing the fees now, or what? Where are we on this?
So I believe there's a policy in effect, and maybe I can ask Niall to clarify that. This came about for planning because we received an inquiry, and in looking at our policy, it talks about a fee, and we couldn't find one in the fee schedule. So that's why we proposed that for the planning side. I'm not sure about the status of
Because I thought we prohibit beekeeping right now. Not that we shouldn't change it, but just, I know we had that discussion.
Good evening, Niall Blackburn, Assistant City Manager. We do allow beekeeping right now with a permit. So what we have in place right now per our ordinance is the requirement to have a permit. No one has ever applied for a permit. And also we have an administrative policy that lists the requirements for beekeeping. When we met in 2022 about the issue, it was whether we should remove the permit requirement and other restrictions or add additional restrictions as part of our administrative policy. But we haven't made any changes since that time.
To the policy itself, it's just that we didn't have a fee, and maybe the fee, if it was, we never had a request for before.
Correct.
Is that right? Got it. Okay, perfect. That's all the questions I had. Thank you. Vice Mayor Dugan.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Just a quick follow-up for Andrea. I just want to make sure I understand what these categories are. What is, so development, that would be someone submitting a new project. But then what is the tree protection plan review if it's not in the context of a development?
Sure. So the development category is if someone's proposing to remove a tree for development reasons. And that's assuming that the tree doesn't fall under another category like it's dead. So someone wants to do an addition or building a new house, they're removing a healthy tree or a tree that doesn't fall under the other reasons for removal.
I see. And we allow that if it's replaced? I was thinking we didn't allow that.
It's very difficult. They have to basically demonstrate why how there's not another equally beneficial proposal that would keep the tree. So that's part of it. The tree protection plan review is for people who are doing construction to provide a plan on how they're protecting protected trees on their property and also neighbor trees that might be very close to the property line. And so they'll include plans that show things like fencing or like wattles around the tree, different measures. If they're doing concrete, for example, near the tree, they might propose hand digging the roots. So a whole list of how they're going to protect these trees that are protected under our code. And that is then sent to our arborist for review. And he will usually have 1 or 2 rounds of comments on average, and that will go with development. So it's possible that an applicant could not be removing any trees, but still have a tree protection plan because they're keeping trees on their property or their neighbor has one next door.
And any significant, like, extension to a house would require that? Like, what is like every major plan requires a tree protection plan?
We will, so we'll look at anything that requires either planning review or building review to determine whether there's trees within the area that's proposed to be developed. New homes almost always, yes. If it's a small deck, for example, we just processed a small deck that there was a tree nearby, but an arborist provided some pretty simple measures that were easy enough to do. So.
Bureau is looking at the survey. The survey always shows the trees. Got it.
Yeah.
And then just real quick, what is species? What does that mean?
It's one of the, it's what we call it in here. It's really one of the removal categories that are either one of 2 things. One is either a low desirability species, but more often it's looking at a particular species in the context of where it is, and the arborist saying, this doesn't make sense in this location. So if it's a species that maybe is near another species that has a disease and it'll catch it and probably die, or if it's a high water species that's in a place that's not getting a lot of water, or it's has a big root system and it's in a very small area. So things like that, where is the appropriate species in the appropriate location, and will it survive there?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And these fees are all accumulative. You could end up getting hit by 3 of these on any given project, or?
I would say The development and the tree protection plan review, definitely. The other ones, though, even if it meets more than one, if a tree meets more than one reason for removal, we'd only charge one fee.
Okay.
Yeah. Development, though, is sort of a whole different ballgame with looking at, are there other options for what they're proposing? And it's really saying that the tree doesn't meet any of these other reasons, so it's in effect a healthy tree. So we want to make sure, if we're going to recommend removal, that there's really no other option.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, great, thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, I had a couple, Andrew, sorry. The tree stuff keeps, I am. Two just follow-ups on that, and on the tree protection plan review and the development one, I guess I have a question. So just so I understand, so the tree protection plan review, we have a project coming up before planning, right, with 808 Alameda that has hundreds of trees that have to be dealt with. And so the fee for that is only $1,250?
That I would say is a little bit different. It's a key development project, and so we're taking in deposits and they're paying actual costs. So for something like that, it would be whatever the arborist charges, we would take in as a deposit and have them pay actual costs.
Staff time
and staff time and, yeah, everything for that.
So is that, there's no development agreement for that, is there? Or how is that done? I mean, I'm just wondering if that should be included, something of a larger scale project that we have, or we're going to have more larger scale projects potentially coming in. How are we making sure that that cost comes into effect? Because it's going to cost way more than $1,250 to manage that project for us.
So any of the larger projects, almost all of the commercial probably all of the commercial developments in the east side, any multifamily, that's, I would say, even more than a couple of units, we're taking in as key developments, which are these large deposits where we're actually billing against the account. So that's just sort of built within our process in terms of how we do it.
So I'm just wondering if that needs to be called out as something's a key development, it gets handled differently in our fees, or does that not need to happen? I just want to make sure we're covering it.
It's based on the size of the project. And so as Andrea said, we do take in a significant deposit, and then we pass through all the actual costs. Okay. So not just the arborists, but any like CEQA consultants or any other environmental consultants.
Okay. Sounds good. That's all I had. Before we go, I don't see any other questions. Let's go to public comment, and then we'll take council members' comments.
I am not seeing any hands in Zoom, and I do not have any public speaker slips for in-person.
Okay. Are there any council member comments on this?
Mr. Mayor, I move to close the public hearing.
Second.
Okay. Crystal, can you call the roll?
Vice Mayor Dugan?
Yes.
Councilmember Collins?
Yes.
Councilmember McDowell?
Yes.
Councilmember Venkatesh?
Yes.
And Mayor Rack?
Yes.
Thank you.
I might have to have you say like 1 for yes, 2 fingers for no, or something. Okay, so the public hearing is closed. Let's move on to any council comments before we move forward. Does any of my council members have comments on this? Councilmember McDowell.
Thank you, Mayor. Actually, Andrea, I'm sorry, I have one more follow-up question before I make my comment. How many actual dead trees do you know are removed? Because you said that it's kind of a toss-up. Sometimes they're still alive when the arborist goes out.
Yeah, so we ran numbers since adoption of the ordinance, and we've had 81 permits issued. Of those, 10 have been dead non-emergency. So we've had 33 emergency permits. Of those, some were dead, but also an emergency. So 10 where they would have paid the fee.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So I would propose, I think it's, when the trees are truly dead, I think it's a fine line between it standing and it becoming an emergency. So if it sounds like it's a small number of trees that are dead but non-emergency, so I would like to carve out an exception that we do not charge a fee for actual dead trees getting removed.
Okay, first I have Councilmember Collins, and then Vice Mayor Dugan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I have a problem with the dead tree cost, although I will admit, in order for it to be determined to be dead, we have to have an arborist come out, right? And so arborists have fees, they charge us, and we're in the cost recovery business is really what this is all about. So that's where I'm a little torn in that, we have to cover these costs, but I do want to encourage people to take out dead trees. It could be dangerous, and particularly in storms. I mean, we had 2 huge branches come off of our redwood tree and damage our own rain gutters. And, I wrote a couple of checks that totaled close to $2,000, to tree repair people to fix that. So it's, and for some people, I assume that's probably a hardship, which leads me to my other thought and wondering whether or not we have one, and if we don't have one, a hardship exception. If we don't have one, I'm wondering whether or not we could discuss establishing one. And I don't know how it would be constructed, but I'm wondering maybe we ought to talk about that.
Okay. Vice Mayor Dugan.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. And I'm sorry, Andrea, what were those stats again? It was like 80-some thought they had dead trees and only 10 of them had dead trees?
Oh, no, sorry. 81 permits issued for all of the reasons that it could be issued. Of those, 10 were dead trees that were not emergencies. And then 33 were emergencies, which could have included dead trees, could have fallen.
I see. And do we get many people who think it's dead, but it's not dead?
Not as often. I would say we get a lot more people who think it's an emergency and not for whatever reason it is. I can think of in the last year maybe 2 or 3 where they've thought it's dead and it's not. And in that case, the arborist said, I can't approve it under this finding. So you'd have to, use another one.
Yeah. I guess where I'm at on this is if we have a resident who thinks there's a problem tree, we want them calling, we want our arborist out there. And I don't think we really care if it's dead or not dead. I mean, if it's what if they think it's dead or they think it's an emergency, I think we want them out there. So even if it turns out not to be dead, it seems like they should be charged the same amount. We're trying to incentivize people to get out there. So I agree with my colleagues. It feels a little expensive. I would, as opposed to putting it on 0, I'd probably just call it a flat 100, whether it's dead or not, if you want the arborist to come out and take a look at it.
Okay. I don't see any other comments. So I will make a couple comments on this. So I guess just in principle, I don't like where we continue to sort of erode our expenses when we could be using that money for other things that may be of value to the community. So I think if there's a hardship, I prefer sort of what Councilmember Collins said. If there's a process we do that with, I think for some of the sports fields and stuff, we already have a process to apply for a fee waiver, a reduced fee. So I think if I would be more comfortable with something along those lines, if there is a hardship on that versus just having 0 fee, because there is a cost to us to do this, and I would prefer not for us to keep incurring costs, and we keep kind of rolling back fees to incur costs for ourselves. Vice Mayor Dugan.
Yeah, I would just, I definitely hear your concern here. I think in the last year there were 10 is what I think I heard. So that would be a total cost of $1,000. And, this is in the context of, I think this ordinance we're doing tonight represents a net increase to the city of $861,000. So what is that divided by, 30,000? I mean, we're adding hundreds of dollars to the average San Carlin with this. So, I don't think that is a significant expense to leave on the table, if you will. And it is in the context of we're raising a lot of fees in other areas. So I guess my proposal would be to go from 250 to 100 on that.
Okay. Any other? Councilmember Collins.
Yeah, just one last question. Assuming we did that, is there any way of, based on, say, this last year, calculating the net financial impact of, reducing a fee? I mean, is it simply as easy as $150 times the number of permits we issued?
Yeah, I mean, I think based on the numbers that we've got, the cost to the city, if we went from the $250 proposal to the $100 proposal for 10 permits, would be $1,500 a year lost revenue to the city. It's probably the only reason I would suggest that having a hardship program would probably end up costing us more in terms of staff time to administer one hardship application than we're generating for the whole thing.
Yeah,
citywide.
that's why I put it out there. I wanted to get some response to it. So I agree. I don't want it to be, cost more than it's really worth. It's one of those things that's sort of a feel-good thing, and which in the long run may not make a lot of sense. But if we're losing $1,500 a year, then I don't really have an objection to lowering it to $100. I think there ought to be some threshold there, so you don't have, people abusing it. I wouldn't want people abusing it. So.
Okay. Any other comments? All right. I could be okay with the $100 fee per project, begrudgingly. So, are there any other comments before we move on? Okay. If not, I'll call for a motion on this item.
Mr. Mayor, I'll move to adopt Resolution 2023-48. Okay. A resolution of the City Council of the City of San Carlos authorizing adjustments to the cost of services schedule, user fees, park facility development, sewer capacity charge, and traffic impact fee for fiscal year 23-24, and adding a visa police clearance request form and beekeeping fees to the master schedule. And I would assume that all of that would include the lowering of that fee to $100, right? Which one was that again? I'm sorry.
The dead tree.
The dead tree removal. The dead tree.
I'll second that.
My screen went dark, so I couldn't see it.
Okay. I have a first and a second. Are there any comments? Okay. If not, Crystal, can you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Venkatesh? Thank you.
G motions, yes.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Dugan?
Yes.
Councilmember Collins?
Yes.
Councilmember McDowell?
Yes.
And Mayor Rack?
Yes.
Motion
Okay.
passes.
All right. We are moving on to item 10A. 10A is a report to council, to the council on updates on key projects by city staff and city council subcommittees. They are informational in nature and no action will be taken on these items at this meeting. We are to receive the annual update on police services, and I will turn it over to Captain Bell.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council, City Staff, and City Manager. I am Captain Christina Bell, your Chief of Police for the City of San Carlos. This presentation will provide a high-level update on police services for 2022. So this organizational chart has not changed in 2022, so we still have the same amount of personnel assigned to this bureau. So the Sheriff's Office transitioned to the National Incident-Based Reporting System on September 1st, 2021. NIBRS was implemented to improve the quality of crime data collected by law enforcement. The NIBRS system captures more extensive range of offenses. NIBRS collects data on 22 categories of crime compared with the uniform crime reporting, which is the old UCR system based on the hierarchy. On this slide is what we used to capture before with Part 1 crimes, and because our reporting is so different and we're still getting used to it, we proactively just use these categories and have this chart next for, now we're calling them Group A offenses. So that way you guys know that Yes, we're going through some changes with our new reporting, and so next year might look a little different, but I wanted it to look the same so we could compare the years before. So in 2022, we had a decrease in Group A offenses by 6 reports. After analyzing the data, we saw a decline in larceny. So that went from 381 to 363. So that was a reduction in 18 reports. And as a reminder, larceny is the unlawful taking of property from the possession of another. Some examples include shoplifting, theft from buildings, thefts from motor vehicles, or motor vehicle parts, pocket picking, or purse snatching. In 2022, there were 60 violent crimes reported in the city of San Carlos. This was an increase of 22 crimes from 2021. Violent crimes include homicide, sexual assault, robbery, and aggravated assaults. Breaking this down further, we had 1 homicide, 9 robberies, 20 sex assaults, and 30 aggravated assaults. In the past, we only captured rapes, but now we capture all sexual assaults, so that is why you see the increase, because it was not captured before. In 2022, there were 28 residential burglaries committed in the city of San Carlos. This is a 42% decrease compared to 2021. Since 2015, we've seen a downward trend in residential burglaries in San Carlos. 7 of the 28 were classified as attempted burglaries, meaning the act of theft did not occur. 9 of the 28 were garage or carport thefts of bicycles, tools, or other things, and entry was not made into the home. We had 31 total cases of reported domestic violence. This is a slight decrease from 2021, which had 35 reported cases. There was 1 case of domestic violence with a deadly weapon. Injuries were sustained in 17 cases, and the other 13 cases were misdemeanor battery, where there was no significant visible injury. The San Carlos Bureau had a 70% violent crime clearance rate in 2022. This means 42 of the 60 violent crimes were solved so far. We consistently monitor our open cases and update them when applicable. We could not provide the stats for other jurisdictions' clearance rates because not all agencies have transitioned to NIBRS, and the state level report won't be available until mid-July. And we also had a 10% clearance rate for property crimes. As a performance measure, we have to make it to a priority 1 call to someone's home in the city of San Carlos in less than 5 minutes. So we maintain just over a 4-minute average response time to emergency calls. Emergency calls are defined as immediate or priority 1 calls in progress that require an immediate response. And there is reason to believe that there is an immediate presence for where law enforcement is essential. In 2022, we had 123 emergency calls for service. And overall, we average about 12,000 calls for service in San Carlos each year, so about 10% are priority 1 calls. So overall, our collisions were up from 123 to 156, and I did report out in February in more detail regarding collisions in town. So our collisions involving a pedestrian did go up by 3. We're down 1 involving a DUI. And collisions involving injury are up from 60 to 70. For traffic citations, we are working on an upward trend for traffic citations and parking citations. We anticipate being at pre-pandemic numbers next year. In 2022, fewer people were teleworking, and the number of vehicles on our roads have increased, explaining the return of traffic collision numbers to pre-pandemic rates. With that said, we continue to use our internal collaborative saturated traffic enforcement program, which we call STEP. Not only do we do that internally, also externally. So 5 motors once a month will come to San Carlos, saturate the area in our hotspots and where we get most of our complaints. Likewise, we participate in countywide STEP. So once a year, everyone in that program comes to San Carlos, and you'll see sometimes up to 20 motors in one area. So our community engagement efforts exist on a daily basis, and this goes through strategic communication through everyone, all of the constituents, through council, through staff, and even just walking down the street. Our relationship with the school district continues to thrive as we participate in the 2+2 joint city and school committee. And I'm happy to say that I have a very good relationship with the superintendent, and if anything comes up, we're in contact immediately and also providing resources to each of the schools. And lastly, we're present at mostly every community event in some fashion. So this captures the calls for service at each school. We started this last year, so we have a comparison for this for 2022. Just so you know, this is just calls for service. That would be like passing checks, medical calls, or general calls for service. So this does not capture where our school resource officer is actually on campus. So we did see an increase at the TL campus as well as Central, and that had to do with traffic enforcement and people coming to us with complaints. So we would proactively go out there, put ourselves out there, and that's what makes it a call for service. I am sure most of you know Dan Souza, our Downtown Services Officer. He engages in partnerships with downtown businesses, the owners, and the community members. He escalates concerns from community members to the appropriate department in the city. He facilitates school tours and acts as the liaison between community members and city staff. And I know this is Adam's favorite, but Dan actively patrols Laurel Street or Laurel Avenue, consistently looking for parking complaints and citing them at our hotspots. So our psychiatric emergency response team, in 2022, we had 48 individuals who were placed on a 5150 hold in San Carlos, and an additional 55 cases were referred to our PERT detectives and team. 8 were referred by outside agencies or had been previous clients who were recontacted PERT for support. Overall, PERT received 111 total referrals for the city of San Carlos. So the numbers on your screen are for the total numbers for the entire sheriff's office. Our enhanced crisis intervention training has trained deputies, when feasible, to gather as much information as possible before trying to contact a person in crisis. This allows deputies time to develop a plan of contact, being mindful of hooks, triggers, and what may be causing the current crisis. Understanding this, disengaging from the scene when safe and appropriate, when others are not in immediate danger, is proving to be a sound de-escalation strategy. When a disengagement occurs, the case is referred to PERT for follow-up. PERT directly follows up with the family, an existing care team, or the person. PERT works to stabilize the crisis and connect the person and or family to resources. PERT also serves as the unsheltered outreach liaison. This means PERT actively seeks out people who are reported to be unsheltered in the San Carlos community. They are often not seen because they remain in plain clothes. PERT builds rapport with the individuals and attempts to guide them to the best resource based on their individual needs. Many accept offers of basic needs but choose to move along and not engage further. Some individuals require multiple contacts before accepting assistance. So some technology that we've changed or we're going to in the next year. You guys voted to change our ALPRs to Flock, and that will be up and running within the next month. And the difference is just capturing an image of vehicles going through certain intersections, and we can query those searches, which also go into our new software system called C3 AI, which is our new intelligence-led policing model, which allows this platform. We gather information from all of our systems, so it's a one-stop shop. This is to reduce time investigating. It improves our efficiency and helps with the quality of life issues that we're seeing throughout all of our bureaus. Zone Haven was very effective during the storms to talk about road closures and even just areas to avoid, which was something that was new for us to use Zone Haven. And lastly, we have the Sheriff's Office app, which was created to improve communication with residents of San Mateo County. The app connects residents to report crimes, submit tips, and provide users with other interactive features. It also provides the latest public safety news and information. Looking ahead. So we're almost up and running with our parks for the new cameras. We're going to get there. We just had our training on the system, and it's amazing. I'm really excited to use it. Project Guardian is also a new thing from Sheriff Corpus, where this program is a voluntary program where individuals, families, or caregivers can register those who might be vulnerable, at risk, or have special needs with the San Mateo County Sheriff's Office. The primary design was to provide awareness and tools for deputies interacting with individuals with autism, but we believe by broadening the scope, we can also help with a variety of needs. So basically, this just means when we respond to a call for service, if someone registers their family member at that home, then we are made aware of the conditions that may be there when we get there. So the CARE program provides a consistent opportunity for our leadership team to engage with residents, small businesses, and community-based organizations. This program enables community members to hear about ongoing initiatives, exchange ideas, discuss specific concerns, and make the San Mateo County Sheriff's Office more accessible to the various communities we serve. CARE will help create innovative solutions, evaluate their effectiveness, and create a sense of commonplace. And lastly, the County Navigation Center, as Councilmember McDowell talked about. I won't go to reiterate what she said, but I will say that we're excited for this to open because it does allow for other shelter space to become available for us, because if we encounter someone who's experiencing homelessness, we cannot remove them from the street unless if they, A, want to go, and B, there's a space available for them. So it gives us more flexibility as we're navigating everything on the street. This concludes my presentation. However, I would like to take this opportunity to thank Sergeant Jesse Myers and Management Analyst Ivanka Swampile-Cost for their work on this presentation and staff report. I would also like to thank the members of this community, council, and every deputy sheriff assigned to the San Carlos Bureau. But there's a reason why your deputy sheriffs want to work here. Everyone is kind, giving, helpful, and heroic. Together we can accomplish many things. Thank you.
Thank you, Captain Bell. Are there any questions? Okay, Councilmember McDowell.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Chief, for a great presentation. I always enjoy the updates, and I think that our Sheriff's Office is doing a wonderful job in San Carlos, and I appreciate the data. I'm wondering if you can remind, I have two downtown questions. Can you remind us what the shifts are of our downtown services officer downtown? And then secondly, there have been some break-ins downtown, and I'm wondering if you can just touch on that a little bit, please.
So I'm not prepared to talk about any break-ins downtown, but I can certainly circle back about that. I know we've had a few commercial burglaries with businesses, so that's where our downtown services officer comes in and helps the business navigate their area so where it's more less intrusive, or so people don't want to come in and commit the crimes. Dan's hours are flexible, so generally he works like a Tuesday to Friday, but most of the time it's like a Wednesday to Saturday. He's here on the weekends. He'll come in. Anytime there's an event, he's here. So it's just kind of at the mercy of me sometimes, or Sergeant Myers, but just depends.
Okay, well, we certainly appreciate having that presence downtown. Thank you.
Okay, all set. Councilmember Collins and then Vice Mayor Dugan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and Chief Bell, thank you again. Always a great comprehensive report. Just a general comment before I get to my couple questions. I'm always happy to see that the statistics start with the year 2009, because if I'm not mistaken, that was the last year that our police services were provided by our own police department. And from time to time, I have people say to me, well, things aren't as good as they were back, when we had our own police department. And this proves that they're better. And so it's always good to know that. Anyway, thank you for that. The other questions I had was on the domestic violence slide. I don't know what number that was, 7, I think. Obviously, a precipitous drop off from 2020 and the second lowest over the last 5 years, which is great. Any thoughts on why that is, and also why we don't have statistics pre-2018? Were they not keeping them, or were they not in a way that matched up with this graph?
We just that's what we had, so I just didn't dig any farther because it's just more staff time, but I can certainly go back as far as we can. So obviously we saw a spike in 2020, and that's because everyone was sheltered in place and we're at home. We saw that consistent throughout our nation. And as people are slowly going back to work, I think that helps sometimes. But we also have been putting out a lot of resources to our community, especially after our homicide, and just making sure that people know that they have resources available to them if they are going through something at home, that we can help them. And there's a lot of nonprofits as well that are willing to assist.
Okay, that's good. The other one's kind of a silly question. I should know the answer to this, but I keep forgetting. What do you mean by clearance rates? Do you mean like cases solved?
Cases solved, or if the victim chooses not to cooperate or press charges, or like there's other little things that occur for a clearance rate. Just meaning that, yes, a suspect is known and the charges have been filed.
Okay, great.
Or someone's been arrested. That's like the easiest one, is someone's been arrested.
And then the last one was on the homeless issue. I watched a special on TV a couple weekends ago, specifically about San Francisco. And one of the things that was frustrating to watch is that there are homeless people that don't want to leave, and they don't want to leave the streets. Do you encounter those here? And when you encounter them, what do you do about them?
Yes, we do. More often than you might think, but I think it's depending on where they are and what they're doing, obviously if they're committing a crime, we have more leverage, we can detain them. We can approach people and try to talk to them, but if we have nothing to detain them for, then they can tell us to leave and we have to. I think the biggest difference between anywhere else in here is that we don't give up on people. We consistently go back to them with different resources. We use Life Moves and Street Life Ministries and other resources within the county to try to reach this individual. And that's where our PERT team comes in, is that they have access to systems and even to get a hold of family members for assistance. So I think through that collaboration, we're able to eventually find a place for someone.
Wear them down with kindness, I guess, right? Okay, thank you.
It's our motto.
Vice Mayor Dugan.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Yeah, and thank you, Chief Bell. Very good presentation, but mostly thank you and your team for keeping us safe and all the great work you guys do in our community. Your heart always comes through. So very interested in how we track data, looking historically. So we've changed methodologies. Can you, was that the whole Sheriff's Department, and what drove that? And what are the advantages of the new way of tabulating all this?
So we didn't really have a choice. It was kind of a requirement by the government. So we just transitioned sooner because we're a larger department. So everyone else is transitioning to that. But before, it was just based on hierarchy. So you could have a crime or an incident that was, you had a robbery, you had a burglary, and then you had like a check fraud, all in one case. With the old rules, the hierarchy would just capture the highest, the most scary one, which would be, I forgot what I said, but the highest one on there. But the other two would not be captured. So we wouldn't know that a check fraud occurred at that incident because it's not reportable. So by having more incidents at the tips of our fingers, we can kind of see more trends and with more information, as you know, we can see kind of more details of how can we prevent this crime in the future.
I see. So yeah, that sounds great, but obviously that's going to measure everything higher. So is there any way we can go backwards and I know specifically I'm concerned about violent crime, because you said that most of this increase in 22 was due to domestic violence. I mean, is there anything we can, just looking at the statistics over periods of time is the only way, as a policymaker, we can, understand where we're at. And I am concerned we're on a new system, so it's going to be skewed. I mean, the violent crimes is obviously going to look like a big upward trend, which won't be accurate. So I'm just curious, do we have any way of adding those back to the former numbers, or any way of normalizing this so that we can continue accurate observations over time?
So one thing you mentioned was that the increase in domestic violence, it was actually the way sexual assaults were reported. So how I gathered the data is we just pulled all the sexual assaults, whereas before there were only rapes. So there's a lot of different crimes as it relates to sexual assault. Going backwards is very challenging because we would have to manually go into every single case that is pulled and look at that, each incident, and pull manually each one from that and then bring it into our system. So we've talked about it. We've tried to figure out a way to make it look comprehensive to where it makes more sense. We've even talked about just starting fresh and say this is how we're presenting stats now. But that's why I only reported out on the 8 crimes to keep it consistent, so it was a better picture for everyone. But that is definitely something we're in the works with moving forward and trying to figure out what makes sense, and so that way we can capture exactly what's going on.
Got it. Yeah, just because it is that historic trend that is meaningful. And then just want to generally congratulate our psychological emergency response teams who've been anecdotally heard just some amazing stories of de-escalation and just how a little time and distance and patience can, stop it from being one of these horrible statistics. So really applaud everyone's efforts on that. And I would just say that would be something I would love to see measured over time as well, like how many de-escalations have we had, because if that's an upward trend, that will certainly help explain why these others are a downward trend. So
I'm glad you mentioned that, because that was one of our ideas to capture how do we measure the disengagement or de-escalation. So we just started capturing that data within reports. So we're getting there. So we'll have some data for you next year.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. Thank you, Chief.
Okay, thank you, Vice Mayor. Councilmember Venkatesh, and I think Councilmember Collins is going to read your question.
I'm asking on behalf of Councilmember Venkatesh.
Understood.
With Project Guardian, will there be an opportunity to teach residents how to use that system?
So it's in its infancy right now. So what we're going to do is gear our patrol staff with flyers or little cards to help. We have to train our staff first, and then once we do that, everyone will be able to sit with someone in their living room and help them through that, walk them through the app.
All right. I had a couple quick questions. First of all, Chief Bell, thank you. And Sergeant Myers, thank you. And also thank you for putting up with all my traffic complaints that I bring to both of you. I'm only looking at the safety of our residents downtown. But I appreciate all the work you're doing, and the statistics really are a testament to the great work that you and your team are doing, and so certainly appreciate that. I think I would just follow up on the Project Guardian. I think when it's appropriate, we'd love to, I'm going to speak for the council, that we would be happy to see how we as a city can help promote that and push that out through our communications tools as partners with you on that. And then on the parks camera and the ALPR system, I know you said it's sort of, you've been trained on it, it's coming. Do you have a date of when you think that might come into effect? I mean, I know part of the challenge with the parks are 4th of July, we get lots of fireworks there. I mean, that's coming up. Is that something you think might be in place by then?
I don't know about the date for the park cameras. Is Amy still here? 2 months. 2 months.
Okay.
They're starting in Arguello.
Okay.
That's what she said.
Great. Thank you. That is, all right. Hold on. Okay, and I had one other. Oh, I guess the only other question I had is, and it's more just and you may not know the answer to this at this point, but as we're looking at, we've just zoned for more housing, we see more commercial development coming in. Do you see a timeline in terms of our needing more resources to meet the needs to maintain some of these response time standards and other things over time? Maybe it's this year, maybe it's 2 years out or something. Do you have a sense of when that might be necessary to come back, maybe add more police support?
I think that as buildings start to come up and more people start to come in through work and play, et cetera, we'll definitely need more resources. I think that the biggest issue is traffic. And as the traffic increases on the east side, it'll pile up into the west side, et cetera. So, I know that I think we're signing this year for the 2-year cycle. So probably by the end of that cycle, we'll probably be ready to add. But I would have to defer.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that's been on our radar for years, and, we'll continue to monitor the data, and the data will really sort of drive the decision when we think we get to the point of sort of tipping over and needing another patrol deputy or whatnot. And, it's one of the nice things about contracting for services. Once we make that decision, we can dial up those resources pretty quickly.
Great. Thank you. That's all the questions I had. I don't see other hands up. Crystal, is there any public comment on this item?
I don't see any hands, but let me go ahead and pull up the
Okay.
slide first.
Okay. There's no.
Nope, there are no
Okay.
comments. Thank you.
Great. Well, then I would just say thank you, Chief Bell. And I know we have one more item that's kind of meaty, so I'd like to see if we can just take like a 5-minute break now. We'll return at 8:50. So we'll take a recess.
as we think about access, their functions, and the success of the downtown area. So moving on to an overview of the specific plan project. This project really began about 2 years ago when the City Council advanced the idea of creating a new plan for the downtown. It had been 12 years since a vision statement and accompanying policies were set into place in the 2009 general plan. And then in addition, the 2020 pandemic gave rise to new expectations for the downtown, including its management and operations. And around the same time, other efforts were also at play, such as the adoption of a new climate mitigation and adaptation plan, a new bicycle and pedestrian plan. So all of these sort of coalesced together to give rise to the City Council 2 years ago to establish a goal for the downtown. And the goal is to look at developing a plan that understands and ensures that the downtown meets the needs of the community and the businesses both now and into the future. So the specific plan will set into place goals, policies, action items, and standards for implementation, including a financing and phasing strategy. The plan will cover placemaking and really focus on how to create and activate spaces to bring the community together. The plan will also focus heavily on multimodal transit, looking at all modes of transit, from the motorist to the bicycle to the pedestrian, and how people travel into the downtown and throughout the downtown. We also are going to be looking at accessibility to businesses and the services that we currently have and services looking forward. We also need to make room for parking and also manage the parking resources that we currently have and consider the uses that most rely on the automobile and motorist for services. We also will be looking at passenger pickup, delivery, and these will be key aspects to the overall downtown plan. So the core function of the specific plan, when it's concluded, will be to provide decision makers guidance for how to steer new development and capital improvements in the downtown over the next 20 years. And although the life of the plan is long-term, both city staff and the consultant team recognize that implementation of the plan, really bringing it to life, is of utmost importance to the council. The specific plan area, the boundaries for the specific plan include Holly Street to the north and Greenwood Avenue to the south. El Camino Real serves as the plan's eastern border, and then Walnut Street serves as the plan's western border to the 800 block of Walnut Street, and then it essentially wraps around the blocks on Laurel Street that go all the way down to Greenwood. But also included in the plan area are the streets leading to and surrounding the Civic Center. We're looking at a uniform identity for these streets, improved crossings, and overall better wayfinding that will help connect this key community service to the downtown where people are really already gathering. So as we begin to consider all of the opportunities for the downtown, there are a wide range of considerations that come into play. These include everything from gateways, what happens to Laurel Street, particularly the 700 block, which we'll be discussing this evening, but also taking into consideration the 600 to 800 block, as well as identifying a unifying theme for the remaining blocks along Laurel Street. It will also look at pedestrian passages, mobility, bicycle lanes, bicycle infrastructure, where people can safely park their bicycles and safely ride into and throughout the downtown. So there's a wide range of things that we're going to be considering, but really tonight we're going to be exploring the closure of Laurel Street, modifications to that, what that could look like. We will take a close look again at the alleys and identify strategies that can help activate and allow for a wide range of activities, programs, and the sense of community so many people are wanting for the downtown area. To do all this, we have a multidisciplinary team made up of key city staff and the consulting team who are working together to make all of this happen. This includes engineers, landscape architects, street designers, planners, economists, traffic and transportation experts, and historic preservation and environmental consultants as well. Along those lines, joining me tonight is Jamie Williams from RRM Design Group. She is the principal and project manager for the project. We also have joining us remotely Brian Hannigan, who is a landscape and architect and a street designer, as well as Brian Canepa, who is our parking and traffic expert. They will be available for questions, and Jamie will be making a presentation later on this evening. So moving on to summary of community outreach and engagement, I would like to share with the council how we've engaged the community. So in our toolbox, we have a wide range of different methods that we use to reach out to the community. The first and foremost is we have a project website, which is downtownsancarlos.com. We also have over 1,000 different individuals who have signed up to be informed of the project and keep up to date about what's happening. And we send out email notifications to folks to let them know when we have different community touch points, whether that be a survey, an open house, or a community workshop event. So we use all of these, and every time we have a touch point with the community, we use all of these in our toolkit, including social media, the government access channel. As you can see on the screen, there's just so many tools that we have and that we've really honed in on over the years to really help develop a robust civic engagement strategy for this project and other projects that we're currently working on. So to date, we have developed over 10 different community touchpoint opportunities. From the very beginning, what we decided to do was utilize the city's Spotlight newsletter to inform the community. This went out even before the project started. This was back in August. And since then, we've hired a consultant, of course, and we did that about a year ago. We've had one-on-one meetings with the city council at the very beginning to understand council's perspectives, ideas, and hopes for the plan. We also met with 4 different focus groups. These were consisted of stakeholders in the community related to our infrastructure, utilities, services, senior groups, and special needs groups as well. We've had 4 individual meetings with our Downtown Advisory Committee, who is an 18-member advisory committee made up of different individuals representing business owners, the youth, different range of interests from our community. We've had 2 community workshops, and we've had 1 open house event in early March that was very well attended. And then we've had 2 online surveys that have been released where folks can comment on different preferences, different issues in and around the downtown area, and also provided some feedback on some urban design concepts that we've engaged the community. And altogether, we've received about over 700 individual comments from the community members that have engaged with us throughout the way. So moving on to current items for your consideration, I'm going to turn it over to Jamie Williams with RRM to present these 3 different but very interconnected urban design concepts for the downtown specific plan area. For the plan, we have led and prioritized with asking the question, how should Laurel Street evolve into the coming years? How do we want to use our community spaces? And what would the community and what does the community want to see, or what do they consider as amenities? And how would they like to spend their time in community spaces that we would create? And to help support all of this, what role can our alleys play in supporting these concepts? So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Jamie Williams with RRM Design Group. Jamie?
Thank you, Lisa, and welcome, Jamie.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor and Council. I'm very excited to be here this evening to share with you these ideas and concepts. And we'll get started with Laurel Street. Our team of engineers, architects, planners, landscape architects worked together to develop 4 alternatives for the 700 block of Laurel Street. And I'm going to go into a lot of detail on each of those alternatives, but essentially you can see the differences are there's a really flexible option. There is an option that keeps the through traffic but also widens the sidewalks. There's the full redesign and closure, or the plaza option, and then there's restoring it back to that pre-2020 condition. So the first option is really the most flexible. It takes the existing curb to curb, doesn't change anything to curb, gutter, and sidewalk, but allows for the enhancement of additional street furnishings, additional pavers, and for a temporary closure that can be used whenever the city chooses to create an event or a similar condition to what there is today. This is an example, real-life example of what that could look like, although it allows for more permanent enhancement than what you have in your existing condition. So this strategy allows, as I said, the most flexible option. It allows for a variety of businesses to activate the space on a temporary basis. It facilitates community building because people can come down there and have much like the living room that they have today. And it also improves the pedestrian access by creating a closure to vehicles. It does result in removal of 63 of the diagonal parking spaces that were previously striped in that area, as well as lacks the full benefit of a true permanent closure where you can have a lot more enhancement. It does also potentially have a little bit of confusion when sometimes vehicles can go on the street and sometimes they can't, so that's a condition that may happen. The second option is removing the diagonal parking, converting it to parallel parking, and then really expanding those sidewalks. That allows for additional pedestrian mobility as well as a lot more enhancements at the street edge. These are a couple of examples of what that could look like. So this option allows for pedestrians to walk in front of retail and restaurants because the sidewalks are much larger. It allows for all those pedestrian amenities to fill that space and make it more walkable, as well as maintaining the vehicular access and the parking. It would result in a loss of 20 parking spaces, and again, you would not have that permanent closure. The third option is really embracing this as a community amenity. We would take out all the curb and gutter. You would put in all new pavers. There wouldn't be you would just have a nice level plaza space. You can put umbrellas and tables more towards the center of the street, bistro lighting, and additional amenities. It really creates a much larger environment for the people and to enjoy. These are a couple examples of what that might look like. With this option, there's a dedicated community space. It becomes more of a destination location. It allows for a lot more flexibility in uses, people to walk by retail, dining, and that public space. And there's really no limit on where amenities happen. Again, it would remove the 63 striped spaces. You would have to require delivery from the alleys, as well as there wouldn't be the vehicular mobility in front of those restaurants and retail stores. However, it is a destination. And then there'd be some minor traffic disruption as well as potential emergency access delays. However, we'll be coordinating, and that would likely come from the rear. And then the final option is just to go back to the way it used to be. In this particular option, there are a limited amount of outdoor dining. It maintains a lot of parking in streets. However, there's really no enhancement to the community space. And so you'd lose that opportunity. So then we moved on to explore public gathering spaces. And those public gathering spaces and the amenities that could be provided anywhere in the downtown. A number of things that we considered. We're just looking at additional water features, movable furniture, landscaping, child play areas, stages and music venues, shade covering, tree canopies, bistro lightings, public art, and there's significant more. But what we wanted to do is show where and ask the community and the public what their interests are in those types of amenities. We wanted to show that those would be focused on two particular areas, a new plaza that would be located on the 600 block of Laurel Street near Wheeler Plaza, as well as a potential redesign of Harrington Park. And then if the full closure on Laurel was to happen, that's a third space. So the next is just some examples of what could happen. The proposed plaza on the 600 block could have potentially multiple configurations, but two options would be, one would be more of a retail restaurant, a smaller space, but you'd have stores and restaurants that would open up onto that plaza area from the side, or maintaining the full space and make it a much larger plaza experience. We also provided some concepts or examples of how these elements might be integrated into Harrington Park. This wasn't intended to be pick one. It's really like, here's how this all could come together and what's important. So there's three options or three concepts that we developed. One was what we're calling the park and plaza option, which is really urban and sort of natural landscaping. The second is really a much more urban space. And then the third would really bring back that music that's there today. So this is a plan view. The left side of the screen would be Laurel. In this particular concept, you can see that it would maintain the tree that kind of goes out onto the Laurel Street. There's a smaller fountain in a more plaza-oriented space. And then towards the alley, there's natural greenery and potentially natural places for children to play, a more flexible and kind of less formal setting. These are some of the things that could happen within that space. The second is a much more urban look and feel. It would really work best if Laurel was, the 700 block was to remain closed to vehicles. Then you'd have a much larger fountain, an opportunity to really link those two so that the plaza becomes a much larger T. This has bistro lighting, which is the X's on the top, movable furnishings, and a tree located back towards the alley. And this is that more urban setting. And then finally, a third concept is embracing the music and stage that's there today, but really making it a more functional space. The way it's designed currently, the stage is at the back of the alley. It's a little darker. It's hard to get in there. It creates a real disconnect between the alley and Laurel Street. This would take that brown semicircle and put the stage on the side. There's some shade sails that would create an opportunity for shade. And it really would kind of enliven that space. And these are just some good times. So the last piece that I'll be showing this evening has to do with the alley network. And the alley network is a really important component to the success of all of downtown. Today, you have a really great asset. Alleys in the downtown are so wonderful because they allow for things like moving cars off of the main street. But they have to be designed properly. They have to be easily identifiable and easy to get to. Your alley system has great bones, but maybe some challenges. So with that, some of the things the community has brought up and we identified through our research is just there's a lack of signage, there's a lack of lighting, which can feel unsafe. There are trash receptacles kind of haphazardly everywhere. There are not clear pedestrian paths of travel, so vehicles and pedestrians are potentially in conflict back there. The parking is confusing. Where's private? What's public? There's some minimal handicap accessibility, and there's a lack of bike parking, which we've heard is desirable for employees at a minimum. So with that, the specific plan will address these challenges and provide policies and recommendations on how to improve that space. It's going to be very important to have better wayfinding, to have dedicated pedestrian paths of travel, so it's very clear to the motorist where the people are. To come up with solutions that clean up the trash receptacles and clearly identify the users for each parking, private versus public. So looking at those opportunities, a couple of examples of what that could look like are included here. On the bottom, the left, is the existing condition, and the illustration on the right would show how you could enhance the paving, create a nice little gateway, create a pedestrian connectivity, and a better sidewalk, some trash enclosures. So you're really taking that and making it an entry and a gateway that's easily identifiable. Similarly, this is an example of how to enhance the pedestrian vehicular conflict. You can see the exhibit on the right shows a marked crossing, a pedestrian sign, as well as some wayfinding signage telling people which way to go to get to downtown businesses. This third example, it could happen within the alley space, really clarifying again those pedestrian connectivity and just making it a little bit more beautiful than it is today. And then finally, where it's a much narrower and more pedestrian-oriented connection, you could have a gateway, some bistro lighting, some public art and murals to really make those entries more desirable and clear. This final slide shows some alley enhancements. The upper left image is a project we did in Ojai, where those are actually enclosures for trash receptacles built into a public space.
Thank you, Jamie. And so everything that Jamie just shared, we took that out to the community, as you all probably know and realize, and the community who's watching tonight know as well. So we shared all of this with the DTAC, the 18-member advisory committee. We took it out to the community for a community workshop that we held in February. We also had an open house event, so we realized that there could be some real value in providing a touch point with the community to actually meet in person and share their ideas and have a conversation with. So we had a really successful turnout for an Coffee and Commons open house that we had in March, where we shared all of these ideas on exhibit boards, and then we released a survey. So we're really looking at all possible options that we have in our toolbox to engage the community. We start with DTAC, we go to a workshop. For those that couldn't make it, we have an open house, and if they still can't make it, we have a survey. So we're doing our best to really kind of engage the community and hear from them. So now we're going to talk about what they're saying. So let's just kind of jump right into it, starting with the 700 block of Laurel Street. So we've had an overwhelming response to, not overwhelming response, but a majority of people feel that full closure of the 700 block and converting it to a full plaza would be a great thing for the city to do. Starting with the DTAC, a majority of the DTAC, when we polled them during our last meeting in January, an overwhelming majority of them said, yes, we really like the plaza configuration, although there were several attendees and members of the DTAC that really wanted to go back to how it was pre-2020. When we took these ideas to the community workshop in February, a majority wanted the plaza. The next highest response was the widened sidewalk, then flexible closure, and then the fewest amount of votes were to go back to how it was pre-2020. And then at our open house and the survey that we currently have, we're getting most of the votes coming back for a full plaza configuration. So in addition to Laurel Street, what we're hearing from the DTAC, from the workshop and the open house, I kind of wanted to go over in the next couple of slides, so to give the council a sense of what else folks are saying about the plan and the project and these ideas that were just shared before you. So for the DTAC, a lot of them were saying, gosh, we would really go downtown more often if there was a place where we could be more of a permanent plaza option. In particular, particular, some members of the youth are saying that there really needs to be a place for them to kind of go and hang out. They recognize that some of the younger kids really go to the library and the ACC, but the older kids really want a place to kind of be, you know, where they can study, perhaps in a coffee shop. So they really like the idea of this permanent plaza. They absolutely would like to see more street furnishings, you know, some of the ideas that Jamie mentioned, definitely in favor for all of these components that really beautify the downtown. In terms of what they would like to do downtown, the DTAC members said they would really like to have more musical events, some cultural events and art exhibits that could take place in some of these new spaces that we could redesign and establish in the downtown. They definitely enjoy eating outside. That's really popular. We know people like to do that. And they said that as in terms of a priority for our public spaces, that we should really think about the design of our public spaces in a way that accommodates events and programs. And then they really like the idea of, you know, kind of like these open air spaces that are tree lined and have some shade for protection from the sun. So that's DTAC. When we went to the broader community at the workshop, one of the we had a word cloud that we presented to them, and some of the key words that came up for the downtown was that it be a place to gather, that it be inviting, and that it be walkable. And these were the most important elements that they wanted us to focus on for the downtown and for our future vision of the downtown. They really like enjoying the public spaces and the sense of community it brings. This was brought up multiple times, that people really like the idea of having more outdoor gathering spaces for space for the community to come together. They like the idea for tree canopies, the bistro lighting, music events, and cultural and art exhibits were also really popular as well. And then when we had our face-to-face, in-person touch point with the community at an open house called Coffee and Comments, we had some similar responses that were shared with us on all of the Post-it notes and voting exercises. They really want to be able to enjoy the public space and the sense of community it can bring. Again, this was a topmost item for many community members. And there's a strong preference to keep the spaces open-aired with shade coverings and really have tree canopies that really unify and provide a frame and covering for the downtown area. They'd like to see more spaces for outdoor dining. They did recognize one of the things that we heard from the comments is that most of the time to eat outside, you have to pay to eat outside. So they want some places where the public, it's just available to sit and enjoy the outdoor space. So that was something that definitely came up. They like the idea of more music, cultural art exhibits, maybe movies on the plaza. And they said they would definitely go to downtown more often, and there are these spaces where they can come together and enjoy. And then so far in the survey, the highest priority for the public spaces is to, for the sense of community it brings. So as you can see, we're hearing kind of a consistent theme from the community in response to the questions that we're asking. And I will share that the questions that we're asking were kept constant throughout every community touch point that we had. So we didn't want to introduce anything new or present it differently. We wanted to hold everything the same. So we took all of this to the Planning and Transportation Commission about 1 week ago, and we heard some preferences from our commission. So in terms of the 700 block of Laurel, I would say a majority of the commissioners, 3, felt that the full closure and the plaza option for the 700 block of Laurel Street would be most desired. 2 commissioners preferred the widened sidewalk option, but one of the commissioners said she wasn't necessarily opposed to the full plaza, but she likes some of the flexibility that the widened sidewalk can bring. I would say overall that the commissioners felt that establishing a unifying theme along Laurel Street would be very important in any consideration that we take forward or that we might receive direction from the council. They also felt that it was important to not just stop at Arroyo Street, but that it would be fair for the other blocks to have the same treatment as you consider the full extension of Laurel Street. So that came up as well. In regards to public gathering spaces, they definitely appreciated the ideas and options for how Harrington Park can really be modernized, improved for what wants to take place there. They liked the idea of the new plaza off the 600 block and really felt that that could be an important important gateway as people are parking or coming in and out of Wheeler Plaza, and the sense of arrival that it can bring to Laurel Street. They also felt that, designing the spaces that can be flexible to accommodate music, a stage, provide shade from the sun, water features, lighting. They just really embraced all of those ideas and thought those could be really good features to add to the improvement of these spaces. So the interesting thing is, although Laurel Street couldn't feel like, okay, that's the most talked about concept, what really rose to the Planning and Transportation Commission's attention was the significant role that alleys are going to need to play. And they felt that this is really crucial for the success of the Laurel Street closure should we decide to move forward with that. They definitely agree that the alleys definitely need to be tidied up. They can include better signage, for the businesses that are back there, maybe they asked us if maybe perhaps we can develop a program where we can help the businesses be more visible on the alley side, especially if we close Laurel Street. They like the ideas, for making spaces for pedestrian, but also recognize that the alleys are going to have to really do everything in their mind, like how they can be most conducive to deliveries, should deliveries need to take place along the alleys, that they're providing parking for the motorist. They also recognize that the parking needs to be managed so that for the people that need it the most, that maybe need the ADA spaces, that how we manage parking in the alleys is going to be really important, especially for the businesses that rely on the automobile, and felt that we really needed a functional plan and really to set priority for the alleys. So they looked at this as a kit of parts, if you will, really how, if you close Laurel, you really need to kind of consider the alleys of utmost importance. So that's kind of an overall summary that I can share with the council. In your packet, we provided all of the raw data, including all of the 700 individual comments, which I'm sure some of you have probably read. There's a lot of information in there, really good information that can help us proceed with what's important and what we need to solve for as we move forward. So with all that, some of our next steps that we will be working on following these initial design concepts that we really see as foundational and help lead kind of like the key bones of the plan. We're going to build off of those, and some of the other things that we're going to start to look at and recommendations that we're going to be bringing forward is what happens to the first 2 blocks of San Carlos Avenue. This is a key block as they are considered, kind of like the gateway to downtown San Carlos, and we are looking at some ideas for how we can really improve the pedestrian experience, the bicycle experience, really trying to make space, looking at the right-of-way that we have and how we might redesign that roadway to really accommodate more pedestrians and bikelists, especially as they're coming off of Caltrain Station, and thinking about the future residents that we could have along El Camino Real. We also are going to be looking at the 600 and 800 blocks. It was really interesting that when we had our Coffee and Commons events, the community had an appetite to hear for more. Like, go big, what else are you thinking of? We're ready to hear that. But we really wanted to talk about the 700 block as a foundational piece, and then we can really start building off of that. So we're working on some ideas, and we'll have a community touch point probably in the summer coming up. The other things that we're going to look at are overall improvements to the pedestrian experience, starting to locate where these bicycle facilities could be located, where passenger pickup and drop-off and deliveries could take place, what are all of the mobility improvements we could make, and really start to build on this idea of placemaking and beautification and start layering that onto these foundational design ideas. We're also going to continue to look at the alley network and parking. We're going to be doing a very robust parking study and traffic modeling study that's going to look at the full operation about how traffic could flow based upon the closure of Laurel Street and some other roadway design modifications that we're looking at. And also, one thing that didn't make it to this long list, there's still a lot to do, but is we want to kind of confirm the land uses and really start thinking about what are some of the things that are missing in downtown, not taking away, but what's missing, and that could be great spaces to see evolve over the next several years, 20 years in our downtown area. From an overall timeline perspective, we're pretty much kind of in the middle, where we're looking at preferred concepts and recommendations, where we're having these meetings with the DTAC, the community, and then coming forward to the City Council for a study session where we can start to hear back from the council about how we should move forward. As you can imagine, we don't want to go forward and write the plan without first checking in with the council, making sure that we're moving in the right direction. So as I mentioned, most likely summer is going to be our next touch point with the community. We'll be bringing back much of the ideas that I just mentioned, and then towards the end of the year, we're looking to have a release of the draft specific plan. So for this evening, if we can offer the council an idea for focusing what we're really looking to hear from for the council this evening, is we'd like to hear your feedback about whether the 700 block should indeed be closed and converted into a full plaza, so we can know whether to proceed with that particular concept. And then we would like to hear from you about the design elements and ideas. What are some of the things that we should consider as we go forward and start the designing of these public spaces, the improvements to Harrington Park, the new plaza at the 600 block of Laurel Street. And then is there agreement that alleys should be improved? I think that's pretty clear, but what else might we be missing and might the council want to give us direction on? So as we conclude our presentation right now, we are definitely available and happy to take questions from the staff. Staff is available to take questions, as well as our consultant team, and we're happy to hear more comments from the public. We're very eager to dive into a conversation with the council. So with that, I would just like to thank the council for your attention this evening and consideration of these items. But I also wanted to take a moment to thank our DTAC that have been really involved, and to thank all of the community members that have participated at our workshops, at the open house, and have really taken the time to fill out all of the surveys that we've offered them. So with that, this concludes my presentation. And again, we're available for questions. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Lisa and Jamie. It's a lot to digest and really exciting stuff. I know that it's a potential transformative moment for the city on this, and appreciate all the work that's gone into that from staff and from DTAC members. I see at least one here, and from the public for all the community engagement. It really helps us make better decisions. So I think what I'd like to do is let's take questions, and then let's take public comment, and then we'll come back, and then, as you have in the slides, do some discussion and kind of make sure we get through your three questions, so that you get answers from us on that. So with that, I will see if there are any questions from the council. Boy, all right. Oh, Councilmember McDowell.
Thank you, Mayor. I have two questions. Thank you for that very detailed presentation. Adam's right, it's a lot to digest. Two questions. So I noticed on slide 27, possible public space elements. Restrooms are not listed. Is that something that came up quite a bit I did read through all the public comments, and the staff report was really comprehensive. Will restrooms be studied? Is there a reason it wasn't listed?
There is not a reason that the only reason that it wasn't listed is because we couldn't list everything. There's really a lot in there, but I will definitely share that yes, we did hear comments about the need for public restrooms. Of course, if you're creating a place where people will come together, and it's nice to be a comfortable and welcoming environment, having public restrooms feels like a basic necessity. And so we started having conversations with the consultant team about how we can fit that in, what could that look like as we start developing additional concepts and additional layers for these elements. So yes, absolutely.
Okay,
yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that's a high priority of mine, at least. Then my other question, and you might not have this exact number, but I'm wondering, I know that on our website, which is great, people can sign up to be notified of these meetings. Do you know approximately how many people have signed up for the email distribution list?
The last time we checked, there were over 1,000, and I know I've mentioned that number before, and I would say that this email distribution list really started growing when we were reaching out to the community about housing. And so since we had that kind of great data, we transferred it into the downtown plan with the option for folks to unsubscribe. So nobody's really asked. A few folks have asked to unsubscribe, but most of them want to stay updated and get notifications and hear from staff about the current status of the plan, when they can get involved, what's happening next. So we definitely rely on that a lot, and we also use social media in addition to that. But I can check the number again because it might have grown a little bit, but it's last time we checked it was over 1,000.
Yeah, that's quite a lot. I just wanted to, I think that's helpful to know how many people were notified of tonight's meeting and the Planning Commission meeting. So thank you. That's it, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember McDowell. Vice Mayor Dugan.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Lisa. Terrific presentation, and all that outreach and the work in this is evident. And just what an unbelievably fun project for San Carlos, right? I mean, this is, and I hear this, and, my reaction is, let's do everything, right? That's what you kind of want to do. So I guess my question really is, how do we think of this by way of time horizon? So this is a master plan, and, I really, we, want to kind of make, have a conversation around, are we wanting to plan something here that we think we can implement in 10 years, or are we really doing a master plan that we can grow into over, 20, 25, 30 years, and really have some spectacular elements involved that might not happen, in the next 5 years? And do we want to, kind of plan into some of that thinking? And so, like, as you've worked through this, what is kind of your operational time horizon on this?
Well, we're aiming to get the specific plan adopted in 2024, but we have March 2024, not just in 24, but specifically March 2024, so like about a year from now, a little less now. And so as we are thinking about, like I mentioned before, our understanding is this idea of how to transform Laurel Street and what to do about it is something that we understand that, probably the community doesn't want to wait 20 years, our council doesn't want to wait 20 years. So in the specific plan, we are going to be including a phasing plan, like how would we finance this? So there's going to be financing strategies and a phasing plan. But not only are we going to identify that in the specific plan, we're also starting to talk internally about what we can do to kind of buy us some time. So we're having some conversations, like for example, with our engineering team, based upon the direction that we get, that we get from the council this evening and during our next check-in, in the summer months, on the rest of the elements, we can start to look at how we could buy some time and what engineering work, including what surveys we can start doing, kind of figuring out where things are underground. But I wanted to see if, Jamie, you had anything to add to that, or Al, in terms of timing and phasing, or kind of our thinking on that. Would you like to go first, Jamie? Great.
I think to your point, the specific plan is a 20-year plan, but it'll show short-term projects, medium-term projects, and long-term projects. And so you can really focus on what are the priority projects. If the 700 block is the priority project, then that becomes the phase one. And then over time, you can continue to improve and elevate that. But looking at what are the priority projects, and then, like you said, waiting till you have the right funding. One of the really wonderful benefits of a specific plan is it can identify and trigger opportunities for future funding sources, grants and the like. So it provides a roadmap that can be implemented over time with the top projects coming in first and then rolling as you get funding for the others.
Terrific. So kind of a phase implementation at the outward bound of 20 years. That's how we can think of it. And then some of it, out of the gate, kind of immediate action in response to all this. Yeah, great. So kind of on that theme, as we're thinking kind of bigger, more interesting stuff, like, this here, I'll go a little crazy. So I found myself walking around Rome last summer, and so Trevi Fountain, how the hell did that get built, right? How do you get, art involved and really do something interesting, big, important, as opposed to oh, here's a fountain we found in a catalog somewhere or something, you know what I mean?
Well, I'll take a stab, and then Jamie might want to add on to it. So we have oh gosh, what's the title of the document? I wish Amy was still here. But of course, we have our Parks and Rec and Cultural Commission, I believe is our title. I think the city used to have an Arts Commission or committee or something like that.
I am the official council representative on our public art. I think we call it commission, and there has not yet been a meeting in 2 years.
So we're working on projects where we can, give rise to these ideas to come forward that could eventually go before such a committee. So in the plan, it talks about, public improvements in public parks, public right-of-ways, and if there is a desire to kind of elevate something to the level of this Arts Commission, you can, from there, you can work and think about how you can engage different artists, different interests to come up with something that's very unique and specific to the character of the San Carlos community. So if that's something that we want to think about to really kind of tailor make something specific to our city, that can be some guidance that we can include in the specific plan. That, so these are guiding principles, goals, policies, and action items. So as we think about public art, we can start to identify in the specific plan what are some elements or features in these public spaces that are important enough that they should rise to the level of a discussion with an arts council or community. So those are the kinds of things that we can establish in our plan. And then with implementation, we know that when it comes time to designing something, that we're going to need to work with this arts commission and get some feedback and think about the ways that we can develop an art piece that is really special and unique to the city. And then Jamie, I don't know if you wanted to add anything to that, or maybe examples from other places, or I don't know, maybe.
I thought that was a great answer. I think that essentially it's a high-level policy document that sets priorities. And so when you go through future design phases, that will be a whole additional community engagement process. It'll be identifying how much things will cost, and then you will determine, do you want that fountain or do you want this fountain? And that's part of this, that's the implementation of this plan. That's a whole other segment.
As you're thinking of those kind of phases, is there ever a notion of a placeholder, if you will? Like, okay, over here we're gonna, start off in phase one, but when maybe there's a fundraising effort or a public-private partnership of some kind to do something really awesome somewhere, like it can go there, but in the meantime, we're gonna, put these tables there or something. Is that actually intentionally thought through, or does it just naturally evolve over time in your experience?
The answer is yes and yes. So for this, it'll say these elements are important. For the next phase, you go through the designing of a particular plaza space. That plaza could have a placeholder for future implementation. It could also have, this is really important to us now, and then we do other pieces. It's just tricky to kind of, under the umbrella of a specific plan, it's a little different animal. So this really helps set the priorities and the roadmap, if you will. And then when you really get into the design phase is when you can dig into those details.
Okay. Yeah, great. Thank you.
All right. I think Councilmember Collins was next, and then Councilmember Venkatesh.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Lisa and Jamie, for a great report. And if it's all right with you, I've got Pranita's questions ready to go when I'm done with mine. So if that's all right, I'll just continue.
I approve.
Okay, thank you. So we're looking at all these street closure options. Well, some full, some partial, some open. Is there any thought yet to what the cost of each of those would be, or is that something that gets determined after we make a decision? It'd be kind of nice to know if we're going to go with a full closure option and we're going to dig up the entire street. What are we looking at?
Yeah, we don't have a number at this point, and of course, as you may know, it would depend upon a lot of the design aspects of the plaza, right? Are we going with, I could say cobblestone to stamped concrete, or what level of trees, what type of, street furniture? so at this point, it would be something that we would need to look at depending upon, what is eventually chosen. So this idea of like looking at it as a full plaza, there's still opportunity for us to, a lot of opportunity, in fact, to look in the future to think about how we want this space designed. So the specific plan can set some guidance, and kind of give some direction, but in terms of what materials you choose and, the whole host of things, the type of lighting, that's going to depend on the evolution of the design as it takes place during the engineering phase of the work. Maybe, Jamie, do you have any ideas for, like, maybe have you worked on any street closures in other cities? Do we know what people are spending? Maybe, I don't know, I'm just trying to provide you with some context, but.
Thinking of sort of a the difference between a minimalist approach and, the full-blown experience. And I make sure that John doesn't have the checkbook for that because he wants to do everything, so.
Lisa, let me jump in here a little bit. So I think what we're saying is this, in terms of I think we could say safely that the do nothing option is the cheapest option, right? We're just going to keep everything the same way, and I think we understand that. You have the different sort of flexibility options. You can imagine widening your sidewalks is gonna incorporate building new infrastructure, changing parking, and those kind of dynamics, and then closing the block and making it all a plaza is kind of a continuation. Now you've got sidewalks so wide they've essentially met in the middle, and you've got your plaza, right? And so you could spend as much as you want on that. I mean, we could put the Trevi Fountain replica on the 700 block, and you could pay $30 million for that one design element. So we'll just have to wait and see. The things I think that are more important than cost are the impacts associated with those things. And that's really what we'll, I think, study and get to the heart of in the next step, right? Because if you widen your sidewalks, you're reducing parking. So you're gonna have to build those wider sidewalks, but presumably at some point, you're gonna have to also replace that parking, which is expensive. Same with the closure, so there are costs associated with all these things that are even beyond what the infrastructure would cost. But I mean, I think, what we should be doing in this plan right now is dreaming, envisioning what you want your downtown to be. And then you're gonna have a lot of projects that roll in, right? I mean, I'm just sort of speculating here, but I imagine you'll probably start on the 700 block. That'll probably be one of the early projects. Sidewalks will probably be another early project. But then if you have to sort of switch gears after that and maybe do a parking project, right? You might not want to touch one of the plazas where we've got parking right now until you've dealt with the other parking issues so that you're not kind of taking two areas of parking out of commission. Get the parking situated. Now you've got a plaza that you can design and implement. You've got that implemented. Maybe you could then you could start to look at your alleyways and some of your other parking areas because you've already built parking out. So this is really going to sort of set the stage for how that all is going to work. And then, the community is going to spend a lot of time, really implementing and improving their downtown in accordance with this plan. And this really isn't the first time this has been done. If you go back and you look at the 80s and 90s downtown, there's nothing like the downtown that we have today. And that's by design. And so there will be projects that, are a real priority that we want to push forward first. And there'll be some things that just have to be coordinated together because you simply can't do them. They're not practical to do at the same time. And then there's some, private projects that come along in accordance with the plan too. And typically when you are going to go out to bid on these actual projects, right? I mean, you'll have your engineering estimates at the time, but a lot of time they'll be like add alternates to the projects as well. Some of those nice to have things. If we get good bids, if we're getting a good price for contract or stone or labor, those types of things, maybe there's more to you can invest heavier in public art or some other nice to have elements that you want in there, but you're not sure that you can afford today. And some things, you can build them to the standard you can afford today, and you can upgrade those things as a standalone in the future.
All right, so I guess you're saying the cost will evolve depending on the direction we end up heading. Is that a fair way to sum it up?
Yeah, I don't even think, I even think the numbers and sort of what we have at the end of this plan should be taken very roughly.
Yes.
Because they really are going to evolve and change. Just the economic conditions over short periods of time, we've seen large cost changes in the areas of construction. But also because, you can build in brick or you could build in marble or, there's just different costs. What's your priority? If you're going to do a marble project, then, maybe you're going to wait a while to do the second project because you're paying for the marble project. If you want to get it all done quicker, then you're probably going to go with, a more cost-effective approach. So there's going to be a lot of council members working on this for
a long
time, and a lot of community members and a lot of staff members. So, that's what makes this so exciting to be a part of.
Okay. Thank you, Jeff. The alley between, right near Cherry, the one that's right by the Hallmark store, there was a nice picture of it. Right now, you look at it and it's, it's overgrown with weeds or stuff parked there. Is that a city-owned alley? Because it seems like it's almost blocked off, like no one would dare drive down there. I realize we can't now, but.
I believe it is. Maybe, Jamie, you can confirm in the alley network. Is it highlighted?
General question is who owns it?
I think I know it. Yeah, the one that was used in the image, kind of like the before and after picture.
It's the east-west alley, right, going to Laurel Street, right next to the Hallmark store.
We'll have to confirm that. My assumption was that it is an alley, but I know we'll have to confirm that.
It's narrow, it's short.
Yeah.
No one, even when the street was opened, there were so many cars and things, parked there that no one drove down it. So anyway, it's just a general question.
Yeah, good question. Thank you.
Okay, and now on to my last question. I can probably just talk to staff about, so I'll do that. I want to not take up too much time. On to Pranitas. Is there a short-term plan for the orange barriers, the water walls?
I might have to defer to our city manager, but
a couple of them came down or were replaced, correct?
Well, some of the parklets have been removed at the, business's request. They haven't renewed their parklet. Right. But yeah, we are working with Parks and Rec, or Public Works rather, right now this is probably going to have to come to council, but we're exploring a couple of different options about like wrapping them. And we've looked at like a wooden wrap for them and also like a fabric wrap. Painting them is not really an option because the material they're made out of the paint won't adhere to it. It'll just flake right off. So that's out. So we're going to be bringing that to the council as, the sort of the short-term option that the council had asked for.
Okay, next, if the plaza option is adopted, what's the plan for the farmers market?
Well, we haven't looked at that yet. Our understanding is the farmers market, is obviously on the 600 block. The 600 block is closed, as also portions of Cherry Street. So essentially, with the closure of the plaza, it gives us much more options to consider for all the different things that we do downtown. And we will be working with our parks director, with Lou, with a lot of folks here, key staff in the city, to as we think about evolving or the evolution of these concepts. What are some things that we should be thinking about in terms of all the different activities that take place downtown, including how we might program them, and then opportunities for even maybe perhaps some expansion and growth of some of the things that we already do.
And she also says, I think we can learn from different cultures around the world for inspiration if the plaza Plana's option is adopted, and I think the Trevi Fountain thing was probably an example of that.
That's the fun part, right? So many wonderful public spaces.
Maybe on a little smaller scale. I think the last question, she says, I think there are creative ways we can benefit the businesses. And one example was that creating a scavenger hunt for the kids and their parents who could purchase a treat at the end. So that would be sort of an amenity that would be added, right, under the plaza option. Yeah.
Thank you.
That's it? That's it. Okay, all right, thanks.
Thank you, Councilmember Venkatesh and Councilmember Collins for that. All right. I have a couple questions. First, on the 700 block, if we were to go with the plaza, and we talked about a little bit sort of the desire to have sort of dining space that is not paid dining space, right? So I get takeout, I have a picnic, some place to do that. So how do we, if we were to use that space as for part of that, how do we reconcile sort of the dining space, right? So if we were going to, assuming if we make it a plaza, we're going to take those parklets out, or they're going to have to at least remove them temporarily or maybe permanently. We would sort of raise everything up and have it sort of be flat. How do you delineate, like if we were to say, okay, you're not going to have parklets, but you can have outdoor dining, town or however other restaurant is there, and then you're going to have public space. How do you manage that in a mixed sort of almost like a mixed-use space right at that point?
Well, I will start it and then remember that our landscape architect and plaza designer is on the line as well. But essentially, it's all about programming and permitting. So just like any other situation in town where you have to apply for an outdoor dining permit, there would have to ultimately be an ordinance and implementation measures but you could program it so that there is spaces that are created and maintained by the city, and then private spaces that are facilitated and maintained by the restaurateurs.
Okay. And then I'll just follow up on the Harrington Park Plaza. So if we were to go with the full street closure on the 700 block, does that sort of generally just, some of those designs, they sort of spill out into so you have more space essentially for that plaza, or are you still talking about the same? Does that expand what Harrington Plaza sort of looks like or can be? Can you continue that flow beyond the building, basically, because now it's a plaza?
Absolutely. I mean, I think to do it right, if that was ultimately the decision, then you would treat it almost like a T. And so you would really want to program and design that space as one large space, because it just provides so much more opportunities. You could put the, stage aside from being tucked in, it could be in the center, or that, as I showed in that one example, it could be the fountain that spills out and really draws people into both spaces. So yeah, it kind of adds a footprint to the whole downtown.
Okay. And then I don't think you can answer this next question, Gina. So on the 600 block plaza, I think at one point the city went to acquire that strip of land next to where Blue Line is, and I think that, if I recall, that didn't actually happen, right? That fell through. So how does that limit us, or does that require us to maybe take some other action to try to acquire that to give us the most flexible space? And or if we don't go try to acquire, how do we do it how do we make those two pieces work?
We'll need to acquire that space.
Thank you. Okay. That's all the questions I have right now. I know we'll probably have some good discussion, but I don't see any other requests from my colleagues. So, Crystal, why don't we look for public comment at this point, and then we'll come back to discussion.
Okay. At this time, we have one hand up on Zoom.
Okay.
Mark Bahaus.
Okay. Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Yes.
Great, thank you. Council, thank you so much for sponsoring this effort. And the consultants are doing a great job. Their ideas are creative, they're human and bicycling centric, whether we drive sometimes or not. It's just the direction is good. What I want to encourage the council is tonight to unleash the consultants. Many of their recommendations, I think, and from what I've heard from other participants and community members, are timid. They're just not as aggressive as they could be in terms of more space, in terms of more consideration of connecting the west and east and south parts of town, north too, I guess, for pedestrians and bicyclists, and really making downtown much more than just a one-block plaza. Not that the ideas are bad in any way, but it just feels like there are more options. There's more creative thinking. Comment about other cities and other countries are well taken. There's great best practice. And I just feel like we could really unleash the consultants several notches more to give you more options that you might decide are not feasible or whatever. But the whole thing feels timid. And I get that sense from others that I've talked to as well. So please keep going, be more aggressive, ask them to give you more options, and make sure that it continues to be pedestrian and bicycle and e-bike centric. And I'll just end with, I think I'm a harbinger of things to come. We've sold our second car. We bought 2 e-bikes, and we'd much rather be walking more and bicycling more downtown if it's welcoming and safe. And the more, the better. So that's all. I just wanted to input that and help encourage you to unleash the consultants. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Mark.
Thank you. And there are no further hands. Oh, actually, 2 just popped up. Okay. Heidi, you're up next.
Hi, thank you so much. I've really enjoyed this whole process of what's going on as far as planning Laurel Street. I do want to say that something that's important to me, and I think a lot of people in the community, is that landscaping is important, and that plants and flowers create a serene and restorative, emotionally supportive environment. And so when I see the discussion of hardscaping all of Harrington Park to make it part of a larger plaza, I feel like we would be losing a valuable resource of green space there. And I would hope that should Laurel Street become a plaza that's all closed to traffic, that we would include a lot more trees down the middle and landscaping, shrubbery, flowers. You can look at the Stanford Shopping Mall and the kinds of landscaping and trees that they have there. It's very appealing. I would say the same thing as far as providing shade. Let's have trees provide the shade as opposed to sail cloth, shade sails. Trees are so important to keeping our environment clean and green and hospitable to birds, butterflies, and other wildlife. One thing I would want to request, though, is when we're talking about the paving, and I saw pictures of cobblestones, which are very charming, but we have to think about people who use walkers or wheelchairs. And just from my experience with my own parents, a smooth path is the most accessible. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Heidi.
Thank you. And then up next is Sonia Elks.
Hi, thanks for taking my late night comment. I would love to underscore what Heidi just said about accessibility and greenery, and what Mark said about making sure that you definitely go bold with getting micromobility access into a pedestrian plaza, in large part because going from a habitually driving culture to a habitually walking culture is a shift, and micromobility and bikes fall right in between those in terms of efficiency and accessibility and can make a great segue from what was to what will be. So to make sure that accessibility by bike and micromobility does get a really high priority, to make this, to make sure that we're also supporting all the businesses downtown that need us to make that shift as residents and to show up. It's one thing to have it be lovely, but we need to show up and we need to be prepared to support these businesses that are so important to our own lifeblood as a town. So thank you for taking my comment.
Thank you, Sonia.
Thank you. And there are no further hands on Zoom.
Public comment in the room? Nope. No. Okay. All right. Let's move on to council discussion. Thank you for the comments. They were appreciate hearing them. So let's just see if there's any general comments from the council, and then we'll try to hone in on the three requests from staff so that we can provide guidance. So any general comments before we try to hone in on the three questions? No? All right. Why don't we move on to, should the 700 block be turned into a full plaza? And if people would like to go through all three at once, we can do that as well. So if people have that, let's start with, I'm going to go down the line and go with Councilmember Venkatesh first.
Yes.
Yes to 700 block full plaza. Okay. So why don't we go that so you can save your voice a little bit. Councilmember Collins.
I have a feeling I'm probably going to be the outlier because I like the option of the, I think it was option 2. Hang on a minute. The widened sidewalk option.
Okay.
Although I really do like the full closure, I still think that there's a lot of potential for the widened sidewalk option. That would be my number 1.
Okay. Vice Mayor Dugan.
Yeah, I certainly appreciate everyone's thoughtful inputs on, I liked the discussion the Planning Commission had about how to really integrate our downtown. As I think about this one, yes, I support the plaza option, but I like their thinking on how to tie in the 600 and the 800 block as well. And, it occurred to me that maybe wide sidewalks on those blocks combined with a closure on 700 would be a nice, really make that sense of destination. I will say whatever we do, we have to make sure it does work for our retailers in town. It's been my observation when I see plazas like this around the country that those quickly become very valuable retail spaces that tend to be quite successful. So I know that might not apply to every kind of business and every kind of business that we currently have there. So we do need to be sensitive to that. And I think a big part of that really is getting the alleys right. So we heard that from a number of parties, that just how critical. I know the Planning Commission spent a lot of time discussing that, and I just concur. If we do close this street, we really do have to be mindful of how do people get to each of those businesses, where can they park, how will the delivery trucks get there, and how do we, make it an alley that really does let people get around. We're not on a strict grid there, so there, it's not a straightforward path unless you take the alley to get around the closure. So we do have a lot of work to do on that. But in general, I certainly support the plaza option, and I like the idea of trying to tie it in with perhaps wide sidewalks included, not necessarily in phase 1 for the 600 and 800 blocks. If not more. San Carlos Avenue, another great candidate for wide sidewalks too.
I'm just jumping ahead to the next meeting already. Thanks.
He wants to do everything.
I want to do everything. Yeah.
All right, Councilmember McDowell.
Thank you, Mayor. I actually want to build on what John said, because I was I concur. I had the same idea of, I listened to the Planning Commission meeting too, and I think that tying the blocks together in some way is really important. And I also think it's important that we don't just improve one block and then leave the others with nothing. I think everybody should have some additional improvements. So I've frequently said that there have been so few silver linings from the pandemic, but I think having the opportunity to experiment with the street closure was one of those very few silver linings. And I think that reading through our large packet, that the community has spoken loud and clear that the full plaza option is something that we've a lot of us have fallen in love with. And so I do support the full plaza and then exploring the widened sidewalks elsewhere. I wanted to also just build on what Jeff said about parking, that if we take parking away, we need to build it elsewhere. But I consistently see Wheeler Plaza parking empty. And I don't know why. I park there, and I don't know if it's still a big secret. But I think that maybe as our public commenters mentioned, maybe there's more people walking and biking downtown now. We also got more accustomed to doing that in the pandemic. So I think that we do need to be thoughtful about the parking because, building more parking is really expensive. I think we need to better understand how parking is used, and I'm glad to see that that's going to be kind of the traffic flow and mobility is going to be studied in the next stage. I think that's really important. And also, really incentivizing our workers downtown to use the employee permitted parking on the second story of Wheeler Plaza, because there's never anybody using it. And I think that impacts parking downtown. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Thank you, Councilmember McDowell. All right, Councilmember Collins had one more comment before I go. I'm going to wait to go last on this one.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. One of the things I was going to suggest that obviously it looks like we're going to go with this full closure option. Given that, it would make sense if there were more handicap parking spaces, maybe on Cherry or on Olive, that are closer to that block. I'm just thinking like they're right there by Didham's, right there by the Holly Hill on Cherry, so that, because handicap people with, who have handicaps are going to want to be as close as possible to that closed area. I know that it's not that easy, but it would certainly be nice to explore it. So that was my only comment. So go ahead.
Okay. Thank you, Councilmember Collins. And I guess I would echo some of the things that have been said in terms of, I guess for me, the closure of the 700 block and what we've been able to do because of the pandemic is, as Councilmember McDowell said and stole my words from that, it's something that it's been a positive that we've been able to do that experiment. So I'm really happy that we're at this point today, and certainly support full closure of the 700 block. Excited about this and the opportunities that it provides for our community. I do like the idea of the widened sidewalks on the 600 and 800 blocks as an option. I think given the configuration of this 800 block, I think keeping sort of things flowing is good, but I don't know if they'll get used as much given that we've got Bianchini's in the post office, but we can adapt for future change. And on that, I would recommend, I'm going to go into John's effort of next meeting a little bit, and I do think we should think about sort of if we're going to put bollards on the 700 block, look at the other blocks as well, because it does give us flexible space for the farmers market or other things to grow, so that if things change, we have that flexibility built in at the beginning. For that. So I think you've got your guidance on the 700 block of full plaza closure on that. And then I think you heard a little bit about the alleyway. So I don't know if I'll jump back to the public spaces. I think that's going to take a little more time. So I'm going to skip to the alleyways about any agreement on sort of updating the alleyways. But I think John's talked about that. I don't know if others have other comments on that. I think we good.
Yeah, thank you. I agree. I think that we have to tackle that kind of simultaneously. I think the alleyways are the workhorse of our downtown, where the deliveries do happen. I think I agree with all of the improvements. I think that we need to be really clear about the functionality of the alleyways and how people would walk from their car. If there's parking, how they walk to Laurel Street, how deliveries should happen. I think having very clear expectations. I loved the ideas about having murals back there too. And making it more well lit. I personally don't feel super safe walking back in the alleys at nighttime right now, and so I do think that there's a lot of cleanup work that we can do. I thought that the photo that you showed of how the trash containers were behind the garage door things, or I don't know what they're called, but that was brilliant. I thought that was a really neat idea, and I appreciate that being brought forward. So, yeah, I agree.
Okay. Vice Mayor Dugan.
Yeah, just on the alleyways, it is an interesting challenge. We had a speaker mention that, smooth is the only real accessible way to go, and that might be right. I just don't know. But I would love us to be creative with these surfaces. Obviously, kind of the cobblestone in the plaza is, very tempting and appealing, but maybe that, there has to be accessible pathways. I'm not sure. But in the alleys, it just occurred to me, I don't know if there's a surface that we can use that just naturally slows everyone down, because whatever we do, it's so constrained. I think we're going to end up with straight paths, and I think people will just naturally be driving too fast. We're kind of inviting pedestrians, I think, with a lot of this into the alleys, and then that just makes me worried that with straight alleys, and it is kind of the only way to get around the closure, that we're kind of creating potential conflict there. So anything we can do with that environment to slow traffic down and really manage it, I think we should really think about. And then I love the mural idea. There's so many art opportunities as we think through this, and so on that, I would say we just need to think big as far as how are we going to engage with our larger community. The art industrial district, there's a lot of artists and residents down there. We have Art Bias. I think they've got 100 artists I think it's like 60 artists under that roof, and let's figure out how do we commission art? How do we really engage this community? And there's just so many great opportunities around that, or even our youth artists, out of the high schools or what have you. It's all very exciting.
Okay. I think you guys are good. You have more comments?
I was just going to say yes to both.
Okay.
So.
I would say yes to the alleyways improvements as well. And I do think there's some good opportunity for public art and to make it more inviting. And so I would definitely encourage that. And I don't know that we have to have art there. I don't know that San Luis Obispo has to be the only ones to have Bubblegum Alley. Maybe we could have some kind of attraction like that to get people to come from all over the place. But maybe it's something that's an additional draw with an alley for something. All right, let's keep going so I don't have to ask Ron to extend the meeting and he'll get mad at me. So. Let's just touch on the plazas as well, in the public spaces, both the Harrington Park and the new plaza for 600 block of Laurel. Are there any comments from the council? Because if not, I will go. Councilmember McDowell.
Thank you. Okay, so I think I'll break it down by park. I love thinking about how we build in music to our downtown, and I appreciated that being called out in the plan. Harrington Park is just so interesting because it's narrow and kind of long, and having the stage on the side, I just wonder how we kind of invite the audience in and make it big enough for an audience. I don't know if it's like a movable stage. I don't know if we think about a stage over at Wheeler Plaza, but there we have residential right behind that we have to think about with, loud music. So I'm interested in the possibilities for Harrington Park, but just want to be mindful of kind of the unique constraints of that park. So I know you guys will be creative. I will just say again that public restrooms probably in both areas of Harrington Park and the Wheeler Plaza I think are really important. We're now an age-friendly city, and restrooms serve both, well, everybody, but our younger kids and our older generations. It's something that we hear a lot about. So I think that's important to offer. I don't really know that we need more dining at Wheeler Plaza. I would like to see some really creative ideas to actively use that space, for dining, but also, we've heard time and again that our teens have nothing to do. Are there fun pop-up things that we can offer for teens? That's a larger space. Is there a pop-up roller skating rink that we could offer? I don't know. That's not a super large space, but I would really like to see some creative ideas brought forward where that space can be flexible. It could be a Christmas market or, something seasonal, something that changes. I think it's just a really unique opportunity to have something other than dining, because our downtown is pretty dining heavy already. So I would really like to see some creative ideas brought forward to that. And building on that, I would really like to see the next phase of the plan brought to the Youth Advisory Council. I think it's hard for our youth to participate in this process, and I know we have a couple of youth on the DTAC, which is great, but having something for teens to do keeps coming up. It's really rising to the top of the concerns list. I'm hearing it a lot from parents. So if that's possible, I think that would be some really good input to have. That's it. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Councilmember McDowell. Anyone else? You're writing a question? No. Okay. All right. I will just give a couple comments then on plazas if nobody else has. So I think the Harrington Plaza, I do think it's more restrictive, so I think it's less flexible in the space. And I think if we can, I like the idea of incorporating some music. I don't know that it has to be like a giant concert. It could be you just have some acoustic music there or as well, or some other things that are a little more low key. But I did hear one of the commenters about having some more greenery there, so they're not just all brick and sidewalk type of thing. So I think incorporating some of that would be nice. I think there's more possibilities and more flexibility with the 600 block plaza. I'm going to disagree a little bit with Councilmember McDowell on the dining thing, because my vision would be to sort of have some kind of pop-ups, but more sort of, I've been to some places that have sort of, I want to say like food court, indoor food court, but kind of cool, hip kind of places. They sort of like in San Jose where the Paseo is. I don't know that we need to do that exactly there, but I wouldn't mind having something along the wall that is takeout, or maybe there's a coffee shop. One of the things I know my kids when they've been teenagers and over, is they have a coffee shop to go through, like they end up going to Palo Alto because something's open till midnight, and they can go get coffee and have music or get ice cream or something that's open later. So I think it's some combination of that, but I wouldn't mind having something that's more inviting, more all ages, and have some live music, but be open later, so that ability is there. But I like the idea also of I didn't thought about the flexible use of sort of a holiday market or other things like that, which was kind of a neat concept to bring in. So I think there's lots of flexibility with that. I'd like to use that whole plaza. So, but other than that, I think those are kind of my ideas on that. All right, let's go ahead. Vice Mayor Dugan.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. All that's great thoughts. I don't have a whole lot to add to that. I would just say that when you were showing the three options on the Harrington Park, I was like, I really liked the Park and Plaza option, because it really pulled in our younger children, having kind of a play area back there. But then I was like, oh, but we can't give up the music space. So I was like, but you can't have all three. But then I really liked what Jamie, you were saying about how if it is a plaza, Harrington is really just part of that plaza. plaza and can even make a T. So I don't think we should constrain you guys as you think through it. I think it is all one big plaza, but I think I would like to see a play area, kind of a natural flavored play area for younger children, but definitely some performance space and not necessarily just music, right? I mean, it could be Shakespeare in the park, who knows? But let's have some kind of venue in there somewhere. And then I do like the idea of really phasing and thinking long term and maybe having some bigger thoughts as far as whether it's art installation or a bubblegum alley or a wall with padlocks of love or something, just some unique signature elements. And we don't have to do them all out of the gate, and we don't even have to, figure them out of the gate, but let's make sure we have some areas set aside that we can grow into or design into or, just kind of really make this special. And with and basically all the ideas I heard, it's great. The lighting is a great opportunity. I agree there needs to be some area where you can just bring your own lunch or just sit and not feel like you have to be eating someone's ordered food. And greenery, of course, hopefully trees. Trees are really efficient as far as use of surface area. And then with regard to the 700 block, I think I do lean a bit more towards the mayor as far as keeping that activated with maybe a touch of dining. I agree it can be balanced. I kind of see that as one of the elements that ties the downtown together, as if like that little plaza will echo the big plaza to some extent. And I'm not sure how we do it. I know it's not super big. I hesitate to kind of make that the designated teen area. I mean, not really, but you kind of would want them in the bigger plaza, I think, as opposed to an area where, maybe it feels more exclusive to them. And yeah, those are all my thoughts. Thank you.
Thanks, Vice Mayor Dugan. And I was speaking on the teen stuff, and that I was speaking about the bigger plaza, not the smaller plaza. So if I wasn't clear on that, I apologize. All right, Councilmember Venkatesh.
Sharing for Councilmember Venkatesh. Yeah, she's thinking of a community garden for children, senior community, and incorporate the youth to create recipes. So,
okay,
more ideas. And I like everything that's been shared tonight, so I'm looking forward to it. And I'm not going to add anything more tonight.
All right. I don't see any other comments. Do you have everything you need from us? All right. Excellent. We'll move on to agenda setting. The only, I guess before we close this item, the only question I had for Greg and Jeff is, assuming we'll need to agendize or do something on the closure for the 700 block, because it's supposed to expire in September, so I want to make sure we'll need to bring something back, I assume, to address that.
That's on our radar, yeah.
Yes. Okay, great. And then agenda setting, I don't have any items. Okay, and then we got to adjournment. So we are going to adjourn in memory of the 901st Airborne Soldiers who, in 2017, the city of San Carlos proudly adopted an active unit within the 101st Airborne Division of the U.S. Army through the Army America Supporting Americans Adopt a Unit program. On Wednesday, March 29th, we tragically lost 9 members of the 101st Airborne Division in a devastating crash involving 2 Army Black Hawk medical evacuation helicopters conducting a training exercise near Fort Campbell, Kentucky. Tonight, we join this meeting in their memory and honor. We thank them for their service and remember their service to our country. This is certainly a great moment of sadness for the 101st Airborne, and the city of San Carlos offers our deepest condolences to the families and friends of our fallen soldiers. And with that, we are adjourned.